Chapter 339. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Yan Ber sat at the same table. The three of them casually ate some spirit fruits and occasionally drank a few mouthfuls of spirit wine. They whispered a few words from time to time, unlike the guests at other tables who were noisy. They all planned to eat something casually and find a suitable opportunity to leave after the birthday boy, the Tianjin sect master, finished his speech. There was no need to eat this kind of awkward banquet, where everyone had their own thoughts. They would feel awkward if they stayed in the hall for a while. Not long after, the Tianjin sect master walked up to the high platform and clapped his hands to signal the singers and dancers to leave. His face was ruddy, and he spoke in a loud voice. He first modestly said a few words, and then he thanked all the guests. When the Tianjin sect master said, "Everyone, please drink to your heart's content," Ji Tianqing and the others thought his speech was about to end. However, no one expected the Tianjin sect master to continue. It's rare for everyone to get together. Today, if it weren't for my birthday, you wouldn't have gathered here. We are all martial artists, and we are all outstanding martial artists in the Tianjin region. Naturally, my birthday banquet will not be like the ordinary people's, where there will only be wine, meat, and singing and dancing. There will also be some wonderful performances to liven things up. Hearing this, the dozens of guests in the hall all stopped eating and drinking and turned to look at the Tianjin sect master. Everyone was a little confused. What exactly was the wonderful performance the Tianjin sect master was talking about? Seeing that everyone's attention was attracted, the Tianjin sect master couldn't help but smile and say, "I have a suggestion. Tonight, the chief disciples of the 8 sects will gather together. This is a grand event that only happens once every 3 years. Taking advantage of this grand event, let the elite geniuses of each sect exchange pointers and learn from each other. This will not only enhance the friendship between the sects, but also allow everyone to feast their eyes on it. What do you think?" Upon hearing this, many of the guests from the second and third-rate forces applauded excitedly. There was a huge gap between them and the 8 sections. They could only look up to the majesty and glory of the 8 sections. Of course, they were eager to see the disciples of the 8 sects compete with each other. After all, the chief disciples of the 8 sects were all masters on the star list. They were the most outstanding martial arts geniuses in the Tianjin region. Only in the ranking of stars competition every 3 years would the elite disciples of the various sects compete on the same stage. However, people from second and third-rate forces were simply not qualified to watch the rank of stars competition. That was why they applauded and cheered, trying their best to encourage the disciples of the various sects to spar. As for the sect leaders and chief disciples of the various sects, they remained silent for the time being, silently weighing the pros and cons in their hearts. Everyone knew that next year would be the triennial ranking of stars competition. At that time, the elite disciples of the various sects would compete on the star platform for the ranking of stars. If they could take advantage of this opportunity tonight to let the disciples of the various sects exchange pointers, they would be able to learn more about each other. This was a good thing for the disciples of the various sections. At least they could be prepared in advance. At the thought of this, the leaders and chief disciples of the various sects came up with a plan. The sect leaders of the Thousand Autumns sect, the True Martial sect, and the Wind Fire sect immediately agreed with the Tianjin sect leader's suggestion. Qiao Xian, Wang Tong, and the other 2 disciples also nodded in agreement. They also cast provocative looks at Ji Tianqing and the others. The sect leader of the Pill Tripod sect also nodded in agreement after hesitating for a moment. As a result, only the people of the Sky Pillar sect, the Heart Moon sect, and the 6 Unity sect had yet to express their opinions on this matter. Coincidentally, the people from these 3 sects were seated right next to each other. This time, not only the people of the various sects, but all the guests in the hall all looked at Ji Tianqing and the others in unison. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and secretly transmitted his voice to Yun Yao, eldest senior sister. The Tianjin sect leader shouldn't be doing this on a whim. It's very likely that he's up to something. Yun Yao nodded slightly and replied using a secret method. "Yes, I know. However, the Tianjin sect leader has made this suggestion in front of everyone. I'm afraid that Elder Jun Yi and sect leader Yen won't be able to refuse." Sure enough, after Jun Yi and sect leader Yen discussed it for a while, they both nodded in agreement. Since the 7 sects had all agreed to this matter, Yun Yao naturally couldn't refuse. She didn't speak, so the Tianjin sect leader took it as her tacit agreement. He teased her with a faint smile. Yun Yao, you're already #1 on the star list. You're recognized as the #1 genius in the Tianjin region. You don't have to fight with these junior brothers and sisters, right? The sect leaders of the other sects chuckled and echoed the Tianjin sect leader's words, teasing Yun Yao. Yun Yao, you're already at the origin core stage, far surpassing the disciples of the other sections. If you go on stage, you'll be bullying others. I heard that there's a new genius in your sect who's also the personal disciple of your sect leader. His name seems to be Ji Tianqing. Let Ji Tianqing go on stage. It's a good opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. The people from the Thousand Autumns sect, the True Martial sect, and the Wind Fire sect all joined in the commotion. Shi Wenyu, Xiao Xian, Wang Tong, and the others also looked at Ji Tianqing with unfriendly expressions, revealing mocking expressions. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing naturally understood that the other party was targeting him. Yun Yao secretly asked him, Junior brother Tianqing, what do you think? If you don't want to fight, I'll stop this. Ji Tianqing shook his head, and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful sneer. Eldest senior sister, there's no need. Shi Wenyu, Xiao Xian, and the others who were defeated by me still haven't recovered from their injuries, yet they still dare to provoke me. I'd like to see what they're up to. Yun Yao thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. She warned him in a serious tone, Junior brother Tianqing, be careful. Yan also looked up at Ji Tianqing and waved his little fist. Senior brother Tianqing, I believe that you can beat them all. Ji Tianqing patted his head and smiled confidently. Of course. Soon, the people from the Tianjin sect cleaned up the high platform and set up a defensive array, turning it into an arena. Shi Wenyu, Xiao Xian, and the others whispered to each other for a while, then came to a tacit agreement. Thus, Wang Tong of the True Martial sect was the first to jump onto the high platform. He bowed to the guests in the hall and said loudly, I am Wang Tong, the chief disciple of the True Martial sect. After that, he looked down at Ji Tianqing and said in a cold and meaningful tone, Ji Tianqing, Junior brother Ji. I still can't forget what you said to me that day under the 7 Stars Pagoda. Today, in front of all the seniors and fellow Taoists, I'd like to ask Junior brother Ji to teach me a thing or two. I'd like to see if Junior brother Ji's strength is worthy of your arrogance. When the hundreds of martial artists in the hall heard Wang Tong's words, they suddenly smiled playfully, and their hearts were filled with anticipation. Chapter 340. Under everyone's gaze, Ji Tianqing stood up. He looked at Wharton in the ring with an expressionless face, and asked with an indifferent tone, Wharton, where did you get the courage to challenge me in front of everyone? Could it be that you've got some divine weapon? Or do you have something else to rely on? His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly spread throughout the entire lobby. All of a sudden, the hundreds of guests in the lobby all looked surprised. No one had thought that Ji Tianqing would be so arrogant to say such words in front of everyone. How much confidence did he need to have? The True Martial sect's sect master's face didn't look good. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a gloomy and cold gaze. In the ring, Wharton, who brought shame upon himself, was also full of shame and indignation. He angrily shouted, Ji Tianqing, you're really as arrogant as always. Ji Tianqing walked toward the ring like the wind and said with an indifferent expression, I'm just stating the facts. How am I arrogant? As his voice faded, he leaped 10 meters away and jumped into the ring. Just as he stood still, Wharton keenly seized the opportunity and shot toward him like an arrow leaving the bow. He punched out 2 dazzling fist lights toward his face and chest. Whoosh! Wharton was well aware of Ji Tianqing's strength, so he used all his strength right from the start. His speed was extremely fast, leaving several afterimages behind him. Cloudfrost Tyrant Fist. Wharton roared angrily. The fist lights that burst out from his fists turned into an ice blue color, releasing a bone-chilling aura that shrouded the ring with a radius of 20 meters. In an instant, the entire ring was covered with a layer of ice blue color, and the temperature dropped to the extreme. The fist lights that were as big as a basin also smashed toward Ji Tianqing, less than half a meter away from him. The hundreds of guests in the hall all held their breaths as they stared intently at the scene. But Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change. He was still calm and composed as if he had expected Wharton to do so. He raised his left hand that was as red as magma. The scarlet true fire in his palm condensed into a giant flaming palm and slammed toward Wharton. Boom! The flaming palms collided with the two frosty fists in an instant, causing a loud, dull sound to ring out. At that moment, a violent and blazing flame burst forth, dispersing the cold air on the arena. The two icy fists were shattered on the spot. They turned into wisps of water vapor and were evaporated by the giant flaming palm. Wang Tong was also hit head-on by the giant flaming palm. He flew back in a sorry state and fell on the stage 10 meters away. By the time he got up, the white robe in front of his chest had already been charred black, leaving behind a huge black palm print. His face became very ugly, and his eyes were filled with shame and anger. The hundreds of guests in the hall suddenly revealed shocked expressions and exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, this Ji Tianqing's strength is actually so strong?" Wang Tong, a LV8 Tongxian stage martial artist, couldn't even withstand a single palm strike from him. Both of them are obviously at Tongxian stage LV8, and Wang Tong made the first move. How did this happen? Looks like Ji Tianqing does have the right to be arrogant. Wang Tong heard the crowd's discussion and became even more furious. He shouted angrily and pounced on Ji Tianqing again. Snowy Frost City. Wang Tong burst forth with all the power he had accumulated in his lifetime, displaying his trump card. His palms emitted an overwhelming white light, releasing a bone-chilling cold current that enveloped the surrounding 20 meters. Instantly, the entire arena was covered with a thick layer of frost, and dense white snowflakes appeared in the air. He waved his palms as fast as lightning, striking out 64 frosty palm shadows that descended from the sky toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's figure was immediately engulfed by the overwhelming cold palm shadows and the fluttering snowflakes. The temperature in the hall seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. Countless people subconsciously shrank their necks. Snow in the hot summer of June? Such a rare sight could only be seen here. Countless guests widened their eyes and stared at the arena, anticipating the result. In the next moment, among the dozens of frosty palm shadows, a huge flaming palm suddenly blasted out. Bang! With a muffled sound, the dozens of frosty palm shadows were shattered into shards of frosty light and scattered in all directions. The flaming palm passed through the frosty light and hit Wang Tong, sending him flying again. With a bang, he crashed into the defensive array. When Wang Tong struggled to get up, blood gushed out of his mouth. He held his charred chest with both hands, and black smoke rose from his body. The same scene played out again, but Ji Tianqing still used the same flaming palm, the same move. Simple, violent, and domineering. He crushed Wang Tong in a violent and invincible manner, severely injuring him with just 2 palms. The hundreds of people in the hall were stunned at the scene. The martial artists from the second and third-rate forces felt that their horizons had been broadened. They were both shocked and excited. The eyes of the sect masters were a little gloomy. Obviously, they had expected that things were not going well. The Sky Pillar sect had a super-talented Yun Yao, which had already multiplied the pressure of the other sects and made them jealous. Now, Ji Tianqing had appeared, who was as monstrous as Yun Yao and could completely crush opponents of the same level. Was there still justice in this? The sect masters were all thinking in their hearts. 10 or 20 years later, when Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao grew up, wouldn't the Sky Pillar sect be invincible? Wang Tong staggered to his feet and glared at Ji Tianqing. He shouted coldly, "Ji Tianqing, you win. I admit defeat." After saying that, he ignored the discussions and chuckles of the people in the hall and quickly walked down the arena, returning to the true martial sect master's side to heal his injuries. Ji Tianqing didn't expect that Wang Tong would be able to endure such great humiliation and admit defeat so straightforwardly. He thought to himself, before Wang Tong went up the arena, he had discussed something with Shi Wenyu, Qiao Xian, and the others. He endured the humiliation and admitted defeat in public. Could it be that there's a conspiracy? At this moment, Shi Wenyu stood up with a swoosh and walked towards the arena. Ji Tianqing, this is the Tianjin sect, and tonight is my master's birthday. How can I allow you to be presumptuous here? Hearing this angry shout, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at him. He couldn't help but frown. Shi Wenyu, haven't I taught you a lesson before? He could see that Shi Wenyu's complexion was not good. It was obvious that his injuries had not recovered, and his strength was a little weak. He couldn't understand. Shi Wenyu had been trampled by him once. Where did he get the courage to challenge him in public? Wasn't Shi Wenyu afraid of being defeated in public and ridiculed by all the guests? Shi Wenyu jumped onto the arena and shouted sternly, "Ji Tianqing, no matter how strong and ruthless you are, I must fight you tonight." Ji Tianqing frowned again. He vaguely felt that Shi Wenyu's words had a deeper meaning. He looked at Shi Wenyu contemptuously and sneered, "You're just a defeated opponent. You haven't even recovered from your injuries. What right do you have to challenge me?" Shi Wenyu was immediately filled with anger. He rushed toward him as fast as the wind, waving his palms to create a sky full of flames. Chapter 341. More than 40 flaming palm shadows densely covered a radius of 10 meters. Ji Tianqing's figure was immediately obscured by the flames that filled the sky. At the critical moment, he waved his palms without changing his expression and struck out more than 30 palm shadows. On the surface, it looked like he was using the same flaming palm technique as Shi Wenyu. But in reality, his skills were much deeper than Shi Wenyu's. His true red flame fire was also more powerful than Shi Wenyu's true essence flames. In a series of muffled sounds, the flaming palm shadows from both sides collided fiercely and exploded at the same time. Ji Tianqing easily resolved Shi Wenyu's attack. After the flames in the sky dissipated, he approached Shi Wenyu unscathed. "Shi Wenyu, whether it was before, now, or in the future, you are no match for me. You will lose without a doubt," he shouted in a cold tone. His figure turned into a golden stream of light and rushed toward Shi Wenyu as fast as lightning. When the hundreds of guests in the hall heard Ji Tianqing's words, their faces were filled with shock. Only then did everyone know that he had already fought with Shi Wenyu and that Shi Wenyu had been injured by him. Understanding this, everyone was shocked and all kinds of thoughts emerged in their minds. It's said that Shi Wenyu is an elite genius second only to Yun Yao. He will definitely take second place on the star list next year. Ji Tianqing has already defeated Shi Wenyu. Doesn't that mean he is second on the star list? This is unbelievable. The first and second geniuses of the Tianjin region are both disciples of the Sky Pillar sect? This is going to be a good show. Shi Wenyu will lose without a doubt. The Tianjin sect is going to be humiliated. The Tianjin sect master proposed to let the disciples of the various sects exchange pointers, but the Tianjin sect was defeated. How will this end later? The hundreds of guests had mixed feelings. They stared at the arena expectantly, waiting for a good show to unfold. Shi Wenyu was filled with grief and indignation. His face was as gloomy as ice, but he clenched his teeth and didn't say a word. He used all of his strength to display his palm technique, releasing the power of his true essence to the limit, and directly clashed with Ji Tianqing. The two of them continuously shot out dozens of flaming palms condensed from true essence. In the blink of an eye, they had collided dozens of times, causing a series of muffled explosions. Bang, 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 bang. In that instant, the hundreds of flaming palm shadows collapsed and exploded, turning into flame fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, splashing in all directions. The entire arena had turned into a world of flames, filled with raging flames. Finally, Shi Wenyu's attack was completely defeated. His attack was full of flaws and holes. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and slapped his chest. Boom! With a muffled sound, Shi Wenyu was sent flying on the spot. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying backwards, crashing heavily into the protective shield of the defensive formation. Then he fell to the ground and rolled twice before coming to a stop. He lay still on the ground. His eyes were closed tightly while blood still flowed from his mouth and nose. The true essence, aura, and vitality in his entire body had already weakened rapidly, and he became deathly silent. Seeing this scene, countless guests were stunned. Many people were full of confusion as they stared at Shi Wenyu lying on the ground, not understanding what had happened. A moment later, someone suddenly stood up from his seat and screamed in horror. Someone's dead. Shi Wenyu's dead. The person who screamed was Qiao Xian. Wang Tong and Song Zhong beside him came back to their senses and shouted, "Someone's dead. Ji Tianqing killed Shi Wenyu. Ji Tianqing actually committed murder in front of everyone. Catch him!" Suddenly, the entire hall was in an uproar. Hundreds of guests were shocked, their eyes full of horror. Countless people stood up, and their gazes gathered on Shi Wenyu in unison. Ji Tianqing was also stunned. He frowned as he looked at Shi Wenyu lying on the ground, his heart filled with confusion. What's going on? What the hell is Shi Wenyu doing? Pretending to be dead? I clearly only used 70% of my strength. With his strength, he would at most be injured by me. How could he be killed? Thinking of this, he subconsciously walked to Shi Wenyu's side and stretched out 2 fingers to check Shi Wenyu's breath. There was no breath. Ji Tianqing's expression changed, and he checked Shi Wenyu's pulse and heartbeat. The result was still no sound. Shi Wenyu's body had no breath or heartbeat at all. He had become a lifeless corpse. Ji Tianqing was stunned. His eyes became extremely serious, and many thoughts flashed through his mind. He's really dead? He was killed by me so easily? This is impossible. There must be something wrong. Everyone in the hall stood up, and their expressions became grave and solemn. Everyone knew that Ji Tianqing had gotten into big trouble. He had killed the Tianjian sect's favorite disciple, Shi Wenyu, in front of all the guests at the Tianjian sect's birthday banquet. This was absolutely a monstrous disaster, and it was also an extreme provocation and humiliation to the Tianjian sect. The Tianjian sect's sect master, who was sitting in the main seat, had been calmly watching the fight with a wine cup in his hand. Suddenly, such an accident happened, and he was stunned on the spot. The wine cup in his hand fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. In the next moment, the Tianjian sect's sect master came to his senses and stood up with a swish. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing, his face livid. Without needing him to give the order, Immortal Tianji jumped into the arena. He bent down to check Shi Wenyu's breath, and immediately reported to the Tianjian sect's sect master in a serious tone, "Sect master, Wenyu is dead." Immortal Tianji's words were the final conclusion. The hundreds of guests' faces changed dramatically, and they all cried out in alarm. The Tianjian sect's sect master seemed to be unable to bear this blow. His body swayed a few times, and his face was as pale as paper. He took a deep breath, and then shouted angrily, "Guards, take down that madman Ji Tianqing." Hearing the order, the 4 purple-robed elders of the Sky Sword sect immediately jumped onto the stage at lightning speed and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing finally realized that there was something wrong with this matter. Seeing the 4 elders approaching with murderous intent, he immediately shouted in a low voice, "Wait a minute. There's something fishy about this matter. There's definitely something wrong. When I fought with Shi Wenyu, it wasn't a fight to the death. I only used 70% of my strength. With Shi Wenyu's strength, there's no way he could have been killed by my palm." Many people understood this point, and they felt that this matter was very strange. However, the Tianjian sect's sect master was as furious as a mad lion. He roared with his beard flying in the air, "Ji Tianqing, the facts are in front of us. Everyone saw you commit murder with their own eyes. Do you still want to deny it? My disciple, Shi Wenyu, has been killed by you. His body is right in front of you. No matter how you try to deny it, you can't confuse right and wrong." Chapter 342. Even though Ji Tianqing realized that Shi Wenyu's death was extremely fishy. But Shi Wenyu's corpse was on the arena, and the hundreds of guests in the hall and members of the various sects had witnessed Shi Wenyu being beaten to death by him with their own eyes. The facts were all present, and Ji Tianqing was unable to defend himself. The 4 Tianjian sect elders were covered in killing intent as they attacked with savage expressions. They condensed enormous palms, sword lights, and fist lights with boundless true essence and blasted down towards Ji Tianqing, wanting to kill or capture him on the spot. The 4 of them were all around the 7th level of the Origin Core stage, and the true essence they emitted was dazzling and resplendent, and its might was incomparably shocking. The arena, with a circumference of 20 meters, was actually filled with violent and raging force, and it became incomparably chaotic. Ji Tianqing was besieged by the 4 elders, and it was as if he was being minced by a myriad of true essence light blades. He instantly fell into a life-and-death situation and was about to lose his life in an instant. No matter how strong his strength was or how high his natural talent in the martial Tao was, it was all useless at this moment. The strength of the 4 elders far surpassed him by many times, and he utterly had no room to dodge or resist. At the moment of life and death, Ji Tianqing withdrew a silver ball from his spatial ring. This dark silver ball was the treasure Chu Tianqing gave him when he borrowed the Jade Soul coffin from Chu Tianqing, and it could save his life at a critical moment. Ji Tianqing had never used it in the 7-star pagoda, and it finally came in handy at this moment. He held the silver ball in his right hand and poured his boundless and vast true essence into it. The silver ball instantly lit up with a dazzling and resplendent silver light, and it instantly expanded and transformed into a ball of dark silver light that enveloped his entire body. Whoosh! In only an instant, a set of dark silver armor appeared on Ji Tianqing's body out of thin air. This set of armor was extremely valiant and domineering, and it was suffused with a silver light that was like the radiance of stars and emitted a mysterious and vast aura. The armor covered him from head to toe, and there was a helmet, arm guards, gloves, and a pair of combat boots. Not only was this set of armor able to protect him in all aspects, every part of his body was concealed with weapons. There were 3 sharp blades hidden in the helmet, and there were also sharp knives hidden in the arm guard. There were even spikes at the joints of the gloves. Even the knees of the armor and the soles of the combat boots had several sharp blades hidden in them. All in all, after Ji Tianqing put on the armor, not only was he fully protected, he was also fully armed, with weapons all over his body. In the next instant, the combined attacks of the 4 elders hit Ji Tianqing with a bang bang bang. His body swayed and trembled as silver light flickered all over his body. The arena, with a radius of 20 meters, was immediately filled with multicolored true essence light, becoming extremely chaotic. Most people were certain that the Tongxian realm Ji Tianqing would not be able to withstand the combined attack of 4 primal core adepts. Even if he was protected by armor and wasn't killed on the spot, he would still be severely injured. However, to everyone's surprise, Ji Tianqing was completely unscathed. He was still standing upright in the ring. The silver armor he was wearing had actually blocked the attacks of the 4 elders. This scene shocked the hundreds of guests. The Tianjian sect leader's expression also changed. Surprise flashed across his eyes as he exclaimed in disbelief, "It's actually the starry armor? That bastard Chu Tianqing actually gave the starry armor to Ji Tianqing? How is this possible?" Others might not recognize the armor, but he had fought with Chu Tianqing several times and naturally recognized the dark silver armor. It was one of the top treasures of the Sky Pillar sect, the starry armor. The starry armor was a heaven origin grade treasure. Only a heaven origin grade adept could refine it and break through it. It was almost impossible for warriors below the heaven origin grade to break through the defense of the starry armor. With the starry armor, Ji Tianqing was in an invincible position. Only a heaven origin grade adept could break through the defense of the starry armor. All along, the starry armor had been an important treasure that Chu Tianqing always carried with him. He would never show it to others easily. The Tianjian sect leader had never imagined that Chu Tianqing would give such a rare treasure like the starry armor to Ji Tianqing. What did this mean? Could it be that in Chu Tianqing's eyes, Ji Tianqing's safety was incomparably important? Was it the same as being the successor of the sect master? At this moment, not only was the Tianjian sect leader shocked, but the 4 elders in the arena were also stunned. The 4 of them stared at the starry armor that Ji Tianqing was wearing. Their faces were filled with anger and killing intent as they shouted angrily, "Little bastard! He actually has a treasure armor protecting him. What kind of armor is this? It can actually withstand the joint attack of the 4 of us? Who cares what kind of armor it is? Quickly take down Ji Tianqing. Kill him. Avenge Wenyu." After saying that, the 4 elders raised their palms and fists, ready to attack Ji Tianqing. At this moment, an angry shout was heard. "The Tianjian sect is so unreasonable. Do you want to start a war with my Sky Pillar sect?" As the cold voice was heard, a white-clothed figure jumped onto the arena and stood in front of Ji Tianqing. This person was precisely Yun Yao, and she held a treasured sword that emitted piercingly cold lights and was like a pool of autumn water. She was dressed in a long white dress and stood with a cold expression on her face as she held the sword. Even though she was facing 4 Tianjian sect elders alone, she didn't shrink back. Her temperament was like a snow lotus at the top of the mountain, holy and arrogant. Countless people in the lobby were impressed by Yun Yao's peerless elegance, and many young men felt a strong admiration for her. Immediately after, another clear, angry shout rang out. "You despicable villains want to frame my senior brother Tianqing? You'll have to get through me first." Following the angry roar, a little boy in a white robe with a head full of red hair turned into a fiery shadow and rushed onto the arena. He stood beside Ji Tianqing, full of anger. He held a purple sword that was as tall as him in both hands and glared at the 4 Tianjian sect elders. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the arena became extremely tense, surging with terrifying killing intent. Taking advantage of this opportunity, A deacon of the Tianjin sect hurriedly stepped onto the arena and took Shi Wenyu's body away. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Yen faced the four elders fearlessly. Their bodies were full of fighting spirit. Seeing this scene, many people from the second and third-rate forces, as well as the sect leaders and disciples of other sects, were secretly impressed. The Sky Pillar sect was indeed the #1 sect in the Tianjin region. Even the 3 disciples in the sect had courage and pride that ordinary people couldn't compare with. Seeing this scene, the Tianjin sect's sect leader sneered proudly. He thought to himself, the 3 of you are joining forces to fight back? That's exactly what I want. None of you can leave. He pretended to be sad and angry and shouted, Ji Tianqing, today you must pay with your blood. Yun Yao, get out of my way. If you insist on resisting, don't blame me for being impolite. Yun Yao and Yen were bound to advance and retreat with Ji Tianqing. How could they leave Ji Tianqing alone? Chapter 343. Yun Yao and Yen didn't even take half a step back. The Tianjin sect's sect master had long expected such a result, and he was happy to see it. His face was full of anger as he said to the guests in a loud voice, Fellow Taoists, you all saw it. The Sky Pillar sect is so overbearing and unreasonable. Even their disciples are cruel and heartless bastards who willfully slaughter innocent people. Ji Tianqing killed my disciple, Shi Wenyu, in front of everyone. The 3 of them actually resisted to the end and started a massacre at my birthday banquet. My Tianjin sect will never submit to such a cruel and vicious act. Even if I have to break off relations with the Sky Pillar sect, I will seek justice for my dead disciple. The Tianjin sect's sect master's words were sorrowful and impassioned, immediately arousing the passion and resonance of many guests. In particular, the people from the Thousand Autumns sect, the True Martial sect, and the Wind and Fire sect shouted for Ji Tianqing to pay with his life and loudly complained about the Sky Pillar sect's overbearing and evil deeds. Many cultivators were stirred up, and their emotions soared as they supported the Tianjin sect's sect master to seek justice for Shi Wenyu. After all, the Sky Pillar sect had dominated the Tianjin region for thousands of years, and many forces had long been dissatisfied and envious. However, these forces were weak and didn't dare to show their dissatisfaction with the Sky Pillar sect. Now that such a thing had happened, the Tianjin sect's sect master stood up and shouted, and the others naturally responded. The hall suddenly became noisy, bursting with shouts one after another. Among the hundreds of guests, more than half of them supported the Tianjin sect. Although the remaining cultivators didn't open their mouths to agree with the Tianjin sect's sect master's words, they also wouldn't fight for justice for the Sky Pillar sect. These people all maintained a neutral attitude and coldly watched the situation develop. This situation was exactly what the Tianjin sect's sect master had planned. He made a prompt decision and roared, giving the order. Guards, take down the 3 arrogant disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. If anyone resists, kill them without mercy. As soon as his voice fell, more than 30 black-armored guards immediately appeared outside the hall. The guards all held treasured swords that flickered with cold light as they rushed into the hall with murderous intent and charged towards Ji Tianqing's group of 3 on the stage. These black-armored guards all had strength above the 7th level of the Profound Comprehension stage. Almost half of the people amongst them were Heavenly Sword sect deacons in disguise, and all of them possessed a strength at the 2nd or 3rd level of the Origin Core stage. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's eyes surged with a cold light as he sneered in his heart. In the next moment, the 4 elders waved their hands and sent out palm shadows that filled the sky, attacking without any explanation. Moonlight essence. Yun Yao shouted coldly and used all of her strength. She waved her cold moon sword and slashed out a huge crescent-shaped sword light towards the 4 elders. That crescent-shaped sword light was over 10 meters long and 2 meters wide, and it emitted a dazzling and resplendent cold light. Instantly, the spacious and empty hall was illuminated to the point it was as bright as snow, revealing every detail. Yen also swung his treasured saber with all his strength, slashing out an enormous violet flame saber light that slashed towards one of the elders. Skycore Violet Flame Slash. Even though he only had a strength at the 9th level of the Profound Comprehension stage, the ultimate move he executed, when he exploded out with his full potential, had a might comparable to the attack of a 1st or 2nd level Origin Core stage expert. Ji Tianqing urged the strength of the sword embryo to release an enormous crimson flame sword light that blasted towards the four elders. Crimson Dragon Flash. The crimson flames that rose from the 6-meter-long flaming sword light caused the sword light to transform into a flaming divine dragon, and its might increased by a few times. The ultimate moves executed by the three of them collided with the attacks of the four elders, instantly exploding out with loud bangs that shook the heavens. The deafening loud bangs reverberated endlessly in the hall, shaking the ground to the point it trembled, and the entire palace started shaking. Numerous saber lights and sword lights collapsed and exploded, bursting out with destructive shock waves that ceaselessly bombarded the defensive formation of the arena. In the blink of an eye, the defensive formation that enveloped the arena was blasted into pieces, and the earthen yellow shield fell apart and transformed into fragments that covered the ground. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's group of three actually blocked the joint attack of the four elders, and neither side gained the upper hand. But at this moment, more than 30 black armored guards arrived. Swoosh! 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 The numerous guards charged up the arena and swung their swords to attack from all directions, slashing out sword lights that covered the sky and covered the earth, drowning the figures of Ji Tianqing's group of three. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing had no choice but to brandish his saber and sword to resist. Yun Yao's left index and middle fingers were pressed together, forming a mysterious finger technique, while her right hand held the cold moon sword, spraying out hundreds of cold sword lights. The densely packed huge sword beams were like raging waves that swept towards the surrounding black armored guards. Yenmer also brandished the purple flame saber with all her strength, slashing out red sun purple flame that filled the sky, turning half of the arena into a sea of fire. As for Ji Tianqing, his eyes were surging with murderous intent. He pushed his true essence to the limit, bursting out all his potential. Soaring dragon from the ninth heaven, he shouted in a low voice, suddenly pulling out the black dragon's sword and slashing at the several black armored guards behind him. The moment the black dragon's sword was unsheathed, it let out a dragon roar that shook the 9 heavens, and a huge dazzling cold light lit up. Roar! The sword that seemed to split the heaven and earth instantly sent 4 black armored guards flying, shattering their armors and covering them with blood. At the same time, Ji Tianqing took out a talisman from his interspatial ring. After injecting majestic true essence into it, he threw it to the black armored guards on his left. Mountain-splitting incantation. Chu Tiancheng had given him 2 talismans, and this mountain-splitting incantation was one of them. After detonating, it could release the power to shatter mountains and rivers. Boom! The mountain-splitting incantation flew to the black armored guards and was immediately detonated, turning into a huge golden flame. In the loud noise, 5 black armored guards were hit by the golden flame. They were covered with blood on the spot and flew back in a sorry state. After landing on the ground, they were seriously injured and passed out. The spacious lobby was immediately plunged into chaos and danger. The air was filled with the smell of blood, and the violent and raging shock waves spread out, crushing the tables and chairs in the lobby, making the floor a mess as if it had been hit by a typhoon. Many guests who were closer to the arena were scared and retreated to the corner in panic. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Yen'er had injured more than a dozen black armored guards and killed 4 of them on the spot. A gap was torn in the encirclement of the black armored guards. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 didn't want to continue fighting. They immediately rushed out of the arena through the gap and fled out of the lobby as fast as lightning. The Tianjin sect master thought that he had arranged 4 elders, more than a dozen deacons, and many guards in advance, so they would definitely be able to kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao on the spot. However, he didn't expect that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's combat strength would be so powerful. Seeing that the 3 of them were about to escape from the lobby, he suddenly became furious and let out a roar like a wild lion. Thieves from the Sky Pillar sect. You killed my Tianjin sect's people and still want to escape? Give me your life. The Tianjin sect master roared and rushed out in a flash. Chapter 344. In the Tianjin region, warriors at the Heavenly Origin Realm were the strongest. In the entire Tianjin territory, there were only 10 known Heaven Origin stage warriors. Every Heaven Origin stage warrior was a grandmaster who could establish a sect. They could help a sect survive for hundreds of years and occupy a place in the ancient realm of the stars. No one would have thought that the Tianjin sect master, a Heaven Origin stage warrior, would ignore his status and attack the younger generation. He did not care about the dignity and face of a strong warrior. Swoosh! The Tianjin sect master took 6 steps in the blink of an eye and caught up with Ji Tianqing and the other 2. Go to hell! He roared with murderous intent and reached out to grab Yen and Ji Tianqing. A 5-colored brilliance gushed out of his palms. He used the 5 elements' genuine vitality to condense 2 giant palms and cover the 2 figures. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing activated the power of the star armor. Silver starlight burst out from his feet and doubled his speed. Swoosh! He narrowly escaped the capture of the Heavenly Sword sect master and brushed past the 5-colored giant palm, dodging a calamity. Yen was at the back and had no time to dodge. Seeing the 5-colored giant palms descending from the sky, he could only desperately wave the purple flame saber and slash out an earth-shattering saber radiance. Bang! The saber radiance hit the 5-colored giant palms and exploded with a dull sound. However, the Tianjin sect master's giant palms did not move at all and were not damaged at all. With a clench of his hand, he caught the purple flaming blade and crushed it into pieces. Before Yen could react, his other hand descended from the sky and slapped Yen to the ground with a bang. The ground paved with stone slabs was immediately smashed into a large crater, and spiderweb-like cracks appeared on it. Yen was lying in the pit covered in dust. Blood was seeping out of several places on his body and his mouth and nose. Obviously, he could not withstand the attack of the Tianjin sect master and was seriously injured on the spot. Little bastard, let's see where you can run to. The Tianjin sect master grinned hideously. Once again, he stretched out his huge left hand, which was condensed by the light of true essence. He pulled Yen out of the pit and held him tightly in his palm. Yen struggled desperately, but his injuries were too serious. His spirit was weak and weary, and he was about to pass out. When Ji Tianqing saw Yen being captured, his expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with rage. Let Yen go! Heavenly Sword Sect Master, you damned old bastard. With a furious roar, he turned around and rushed toward the Tianjin sect master with the black dragon sword in his hand, intending to rescue Yen. But just as he turned around, his arm was grabbed by a slender hand. He turned his head and saw Yunyao looking at him with a solemn expression. She shook her head and said to him through voice transmission, Tianqing, don't be impulsive. Now is not the time to act on impulse. This is the Tianjin sect's conspiracy. The Tianjin sect master wants to kill us. We must leave this place immediately. Otherwise, all 3 of us will die here. The Heavenly Sword sect's sect master meticulously devised this scheme to kill us. Even if master were to avenge us, it would be useless. How could Ji Tianqing not understand this? But when he saw Yen being seriously injured and captured by the Tianjin sect master, how could he leave Yen alone? Senior sister, I understand what you said. But what about Yen? We can't leave him behind. Yunyao pursed her lips and said in a low but firm tone, Tianqing, you have to believe me. We must leave immediately. Yen is the crown prince of the Fire Clan. No matter how arrogant the Tianjin sect master is, he will never dare to kill Yen unless he wants to be the enemy of the entire Fire Clan. Although the population of the Fire Clan was small, all of them were gifted. There were many masters in the clan. If the Tianjin sect master killed the crown prince of the Fire Clan, it would be a declaration of war against the entire Fire Clan. No matter how powerful the Tianjin sect was, it couldn't bear the revenge and anger of the Fire Clan. It would definitely be destroyed. Ji Tianqing was weighing the pros and cons in his heart. He still didn't want to give up the hope of rescuing Yen. At this time, Yen struggled to support his seriously injured body and shouted to him and Yunyao in a hoarse voice, Senior sister, senior brother Tianqing. Run. Don't worry about me. Go and report to master. He seemed to have exhausted all his strength. After shouting these 2 words, he couldn't hold on any longer. He closed his eyes and fainted. The Tianjin sect master threw Yen to an elder and rushed to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao with a ferocious face. He shouted angrily, Bastards, you want to run away in front of me? Wishful thinking. He raised his right palm again, and an overwhelming 5-colored brilliance burst out from his palm and blasted toward Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing subconsciously raised his left arm and accumulated all his power in his left hand. Suddenly, his entire left arm turned red like magma, and the dark purple true fire of red flame surged in his palm. Burning sky palm. Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth and roared. He unleashed all his potential and used his strongest killing move. Boom! An incomparably huge flaming palm appeared. A monstrous fire gushed out, illuminating the entire hall red. The broken pieces of the tables and chairs scattered on the ground were burned into charcoal. The flaming palm carried a destructive impact and blasted the giant palm of the Tianjin sect master head-on, drowning his figure. A scene that shocked everyone to the point of suffocation appeared. The five-colored brilliance of the Tianjin sect master was smashed into pieces by the flaming palm. Even the Tianjin sect master was hit by the flaming palm and flew backward in a sorry state. Bang! The Tianjin sect master flew backward 100 meters and slammed into the wall of the palace. The flaming palm blasted a hole with a radius of more than 10 meters in the hard wall made of huge stones. Dense cracks appeared on the wall, and then, with a series of cracking sounds, the wall completely collapsed. The flaming palm wrapped around the Tianjin sect master and blasted through the wall of the hall. It flew another 100 meters and blasted through a palace before finally dissipating. The palace shook violently for a while and then collapsed with a rumble. It turned into a pile of rubble and buried the Tianjin sect master. Everyone was dumbfounded. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that Ji Tianqing, who was only at the Tongxian realm, could use such a destructive palm technique. The Tianjin sect master, who was at the Tianyuan realm, was sent flying by a Tongxian realm martial artist. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. This was a miracle. No, this was a miracle. An unprecedented miracle. When everyone came to their senses, they immediately burst into deafening screams. At this moment, the entire northern wall of the hall collapsed. The entire hall shook violently and began to collapse. The enormous roof cracked quickly, and large pieces of broken bricks fell down from the roof, landing in the hall along with a series of loud thuds. Many of the guests immediately dispersed in an uproar, scrambling to escape from the hall. Chapter 345. Ji Tianqing had used the burning sky palm for the first time in the world of lava in the hidden fog mountains. He had destroyed a volcano with one blow. The burial of heaven had reminded him that although the burning sky palm had the power to destroy the world, it would also consume his true red flame fire. He could only use the burning sky palm 3 times in a short period of time. His true red flame fire would be exhausted, and he would have to cultivate for a long time to recover. It was the second time Ji Tianqing had used the burning sky palm. Although he had created a miracle and sent the Tianjin sect master flying with one blow, he had consumed too much true red flame fire. However, he had consumed too much of his scarlet flame true fire. At most, he could use it one more time before his scarlet flame true fire ran out. However, he did not expect to kill or injure the Tianjin sect master with the burning sky palm. He would be satisfied if he could force him to retreat. Swoosh! Swoosh! Yun Yao pulled him out of the hall and stepped into the dark night. As soon as they escaped from the hall, they saw a large number of experts lying in ambush in the square outside the hall. More than 20 white-robed guards, as well as 5 black-robed deacons, all of them holding shining swords, rushed over with murderous intent. Kill them! The sect master has ordered us not to let them leave alive. Kill them! Hearing the shouts of the guards, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both frowned and looked serious. In the hall behind them, several elders, deacons, and black-armored guards were chasing after them with murderous intent. There was an ambush in front of them and pursuers behind them. They were in a dilemma. What was worse was that the Tianjin sect master had climbed out of the ruins of the palace. After all, he was an expert in the sky origin stage. Even if he was careless and was sent flying by Ji Tianqing's burning sky palm, he had no defense. However, he possessed an incomparably valiant defensive technique that neutralized the might of the burning sky palm, so he did not suffer any injuries. Ji Tianqing's attack had provoked his anger and ferocity. He was so ashamed and angry that he almost went berserk. Ji Tianqing, I will skin you alive and pull out your tendons. The Tianjin sect master roared angrily and turned into a ball of dark red fire. He rushed out of the brick ruins, passed through the crumbling lobby, and pounced toward Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The situation was extremely critical. If Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao did not think of a way to escape, they would be besieged by many experts and experts. At that time, it would be impossible for him to escape even if he had wings. He would definitely die. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing immediately took out the second talisman Chu Tiansheng had given him from his spatial ring. Boundless true essence gushed out of his palm and poured into the charm as he shouted, "Void escape charm." The talisman instantly burned into black ash and lit up with a dazzling white light, condensing into an oval-shaped light gate. The moment the white light door was formed, Ji Tianqing pulled Yun Yao into the light door. Shwa! With a flash of white light, the two of them disappeared into thin air. The oval-shaped white light door immediately collapsed and dissipated, turning into white light spots that scattered in the night sky. In the next moment, the numerous guards and deacons waved their swords and slashed out sword lights that filled the sky. With its swish, swish, swish sound, a huge deep pit was blasted out on the ground. The loud noise was deafening. Dust flew everywhere, and the entrance of the lobby was in chaos. When the smoke and dust dissipated, the Tianjin sect master and several elders finally arrived at the entrance. Under the eaves of the corridor outside the door, the ground was full of cracks, leaving only a huge deep pit. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this scene, the Tianjin sect master was so angry that his eyes turned red. He roared furiously, "Chase after them. Even if we have to chase them to the ends of the earth, we must kill them." Everyone felt his monstrous anger and kept quiet out of fear, not daring to be negligent. Several deacons led a large number of black-armored guards and hurried into the dark night sky to chase after Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Originally, the Tianjin sect master's plan was perfect, and the process was very smooth. If there were no accidents, he would have killed Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao by now. But he never expected that the final result would be like this. Two of the Tianjin sect's palaces were destroyed, and more than a dozen guards and deacons were killed or injured. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao escaped successfully. How could the Heavenly Sword sect master not be enraged? At the same time, a purple-robed elder beside him secretly transmitted a message to him. "Sect master, things have come to this. Please calm down. The people of the various sects are still here. What do you think we should do?" The Tianjin sect master took several deep breaths before he could barely suppress his anger. He turned his head and looked at the collapsing lobby. He saw hundreds of guests with complicated expressions on their faces. They were still scrambling to get out of the building. His face was cold, and his tone was indifferent as he said, "Fellow Taoists, I am very angry and distressed that such a thing happened at my birthday banquet tonight. I believe that everyone has witnessed the arrogance, despotism, and brutality of the Sky Pillar sect. I still have things to deal with, so I won't entertain you. I hope that everyone will be magnanimous enough to forgive me. Take care." The Tianjin sect master spoke politely, but what he actually meant was that he was going to see the guests out. The guests were very tactful. They quickly left the lobby, casually said goodbye, and went down the mountain under the cover of the night. The Heavenly Sword sect master couldn't be bothered to exchange pleasantries with the various guests. He directly ignored everyone and quickly left with a few elders. After a while, everyone entered the conference hall. An elder in a purple robe carried the unconscious Yen and asked the Tianjin sect master, "Sect master, how should we deal with this kid? Do you want to kill him?" The Tianjin sect master glanced at the elder and shouted in a deep voice, "Lock him up in the secret room and watch over him strictly. Don't let him escape, and don't let him die. This kid is the crown prince of the Fire Clan. If he dies in our Tianjin sect, all of you will be buried with him." The elder immediately nodded to show that he understood. He turned around and left the conference hall with Yen Ber. The Tianjin sect master ordered the other elders, "You all immediately take people and search the surrounding area. You must find Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Once you find them, kill them on the spot." The elders immediately cupped their hands and accepted the order. They quickly left the conference hall to carry out the order. After the elders left, the Tianjin sect master hurriedly took Taoist Tianji out of the conference hall and entered a secret room full of spiritual qi. There were two people in the dimly lit secret room. One of them was Shi Wenyu, who was lying on the cold jade ice bed. He was motionless and breathless. The other person was foreign guest Huangfu. After the Tianjin sect master took Taoist Tianji into the secret room, he couldn't wait to order. Taoist Tianji, quickly use the antidote to wake Wenyu up, so as not to delay his recovery. Taoist Tianji nodded and pretended to perform a secret technique. He used his fingers to hit several acupoints on Shi Wenyu's body. Then he took out a pill from his interspatial ring and stuffed it into Shi Wenyu's mouth. Everyone waited patiently for a while, but Shi Wenyu still didn't move and didn't respond at all. Seeing this scene, the Tianjin sect master frowned in confusion. He walked to Shi Wenyu's side and reached out to touch Shi Wenyu's forehead. He felt a chill without any warmth. He turned to look at Daoist Tianji and asked in a deep voice, "Daoist Tianji, what's going on? Why hasn't Wenyu woken up yet?" Daoist Tianji hurriedly stepped forward and carefully checked Shi Wenyu's pulse and heartbeat. After a while, he suddenly found the result. His expression changed dramatically, and he reported in a heavy tone, "Sect Master, Wenyu, he can't be saved." "What? Can't be saved?" Chapter 346. After a long while, the Tianjin sect master came to his senses. He stared at Daoist Tianji with bloodshot eyes and asked anxiously, "Daoist Tianji, what happened? Didn't you say that after when you took the fake death pill, as long as he was rescued in time, he would be able to come back to life? How could he not be saved?" Daoist Tianji showed a compassionate expression, shook his head and sighed. "Alas, sect master, we have delayed for too long. We have already missed the opportunity to rescue him. Moreover, that brat Ji Tianqing was too heavy-handed. I am powerless to reverse the situation. Sect master, please restrain your grief." The Tianjin sect master's face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with deep sorrow and despair. His body was bent as he walked stiffly to the side of Shi Wenyu's body and sat down weakly. The sect master of the Tianjin sect, a heaven origin stage expert, lowered his head and looked at Shi Wenyu's body. 2 lines of clear tears fell from his eyes. "Wenyu, Master only wanted to use you as bait to set up a scheme. I didn't really want to kill you. Master has let you down." Daoist Tianji and guest elder Huangfu saw the Tianjin sect master's tear-streaked, grief-stricken appearance and quietly left the secret chamber. Only the Tianjin sect master and Shi Wenyu's body were left in the secret chamber. The Tianjin sect master held Shi Wenyu's hand and sighed. "Wenyu, your father and I were bosom buddies. Back then, he sacrificed his life to save me, and before he died, he entrusted you to me. For the past 15 years, I have felt guilty in my heart, so I treated you like my own son and cultivated you with all my heart. Who would have thought that in the end, you would die tragically under Ji Tianqing's hands? Master has let your father down." The Tianjin sect master raised his sleeve to wipe away his tears. His eyes were filled with monstrous hatred, and his voice was filled with resentment. "Wenyu, don't worry. Master won't let you die in vain. Master will destroy the Sky Pillar sect soon. I will kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with my own hands, and use their heads to pay tribute to you. Master will make the Sky Pillar sect pay with their blood, and pay them back tenfold." The Tianjin sect master's body emitted a blazing murderous aura as he spoke, and his eyes were filled with cold light. At the back of the Divine Sword Peak, in a floating palace near a cliff. In the room, Master Tianji, the Daoist Tianji, and Tianji is? At this moment, the door was opened and the white-haired Daoist priest Tianji quickly walked in. Tianji to Tianji. Masters Tianji Tianu, to the Blood Moon Infanta raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "High Priest, the purity pill you gave Shi Wenyu is clearly a pill that can seal quintessence and reduce his strength. Why did you lie to them and say that it was the death-faking medicine? If I'm not wrong, Shi Wenyu is probably already dead, right?" The high priest nodded and sneered. "Shi Wenyu is just an insignificant pawn. Only when he dies can his value be reflected." Humph. The human race is so hypocritical and disgusting. It's obvious that the two sects are like fire and water, but the Tianjin sect still cares about morality. Since that's the case, I'll do them a favor and give them a reason to start a war. Only if Shi Wenyu is really dead can we completely enrage the Tianjin sect master and ignite the flames of war between the two sects. The Blood Moon Infanta suddenly understood the high priest's intention. She couldn't help but nod with a cold smile. The high priest is indeed a good strategist. Ji Tianqing killed Shi Wenyu in front of everyone at the Tianjin sect master's birthday banquet. Now that things have developed to this point, I don't believe that the Tianjin sect master can still hold back. The high priest grinned and revealed a mocking sneer. After a moment of silence, his expression became serious again. He said in a solemn tone, "Infanta, please wait patiently. The Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect will soon start a war. When the two sects start a war, it will be the day we rescue the Demon King. The Demon King has been sealed for 1,000 years. After breaking the seal, he will definitely be weak and will need to devour an endless amount of blood to condense the Demon King's true body." Humph. At that time, everyone in the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect will become sacrifices for the Demon King to condense the Demon King's true body. The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and said expectantly, "I really look forward to that day coming soon. It won't be long." The high priest sneered and walked out of the room. 20 miles away from the Tianjin sect, at the foot of a towering mountain. In the gloomy night, a white light suddenly flashed with a swish sound. After the white light dissipated, a young man and a young woman in white robes appeared on the grassland at the foot of the mountain. These two people were Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. After landing, the two of them turned their heads and looked around, observing the terrain. Yun Yao turned her head and looked behind her. Her sharp eyes saw the Tianjin sect and the brightly lit Divine Sword Peak. "Tianqing, this place is too close to the Divine Sword Peak. It's only 20 miles away. The Tianjin sect has sent a large number of experts to hunt us down. We must leave as soon as possible." At the same time, Ji Tianqing also saw the terrain clearly. He nodded with a serious expression and said, "Senior sister, there's no time to lose. We must hurry back to the sect and report the news to our master." As he spoke, he took out the 100 treasures brocade pouch and was about to wake Qian Yu up. At this time, Yun Yao took out a jade pendant from her waist and released a huge white spiritual crane. "Tianqing, let's go back on the spiritual crane together. It'll be faster." Ji Tianqing also knew that Qian Yu's flying speed was not as fast as the spiritual crane, so he nodded and agreed. Then, the two of them jumped onto the back of the spiritual crane and flew high into the sky. The spiritual crane flew gracefully in the night sky and rushed back to the Sky Pillar sect at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing stood on the back of the spiritual crane and turned back to look at the Tianjin sect. His eyes were fixed on the brightly lit Divine Sword Peak. "Yan nothing must happen to you. We will come to save you soon," he murmured in his heart. 4 hours later, the spiritual crane carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao back to the Sky Pillar sect. It was midnight, and the spiritual crane landed directly on the Qishao Peak. After the spiritual crane landed, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao jumped down and quickly rushed to the sect leader's residence. After the two of them arrived at Chu Tianqing's residence, they reported the situation to the black-robed guard and waited in the study. After a while, the sect leader, Chu Tianqing, hurried to the study. As soon as he entered the study, he asked with a grave expression and a worried tone, "Yun Yao, Tianqing, what happened? Why did you rush back in the middle of the night?" Yun Yao immediately replied truthfully, reporting to Master, "At the birthday banquet of the Tianjin sect's sect leader tonight, the Tianjin sect plotted to frame junior brother Tianqing. They used Shi Wenyu's death as an excuse to kill us." Chapter 347. Upon hearing this news, Chu Tianqing's expression changed dramatically, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "What? The Tianjin sect's master dared to set you up and wanted to kill you all? He even kidnapped Yan Tianqing, what's going on? You tell master." Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and accepted the order. Then he briefly explained what had happened. When Chu Tianqing heard the entire story, his face was filled with anger. He slapped the desk and smashed it into pieces. "Damn Tianjin sect. Damn Gao Yi. He dared to set up a trap to kill my 3 disciples. Did he eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall?" Chu Tianqing's whole body was filled with killing intent. He said in a low and stern voice, "The Tianjin sect used to be secretive about their actions. This time, they actually want to go to war. Since they want to fight, I'll meet them. I'll take people to the Tianjin sect immediately. No matter what, I'll rescue Yan At this time, Yun Yao cupped her hands again and said, "Master, I have another thing to report. At tonight's birthday banquet, there was a white-haired old man beside the Tianjin sect's master. I sensed the aura of the demon clan from him." "The aura of the demon clan?" Chu Tianqing's expression changed dramatically, and his face was filled with disbelief. Gaoi has the demon clan beside him? Is he colluding with the demon clan? He knew very well that Yun Yao's heavenly spirit sacred body bloodline was very sensitive to the aura of other races. Since Yun Yao was so sure, it couldn't be wrong. Chu Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then asked, were the other sect masters present? Did they notice anything unusual? How did they react? Yun Yao shook her head gently. The other sect masters were present, but they didn't notice anything unusual and didn't react. That's why I didn't tell anyone when I detected the aura of the demon clan. I immediately escaped from the Tianjian sect with junior brother Tianqing and came back to report the news to you. Chu Tianqing nodded slightly, his expression solemn as he said, in that case, Gaoi may not have colluded with the demon race, but may have been used by them. No matter what, since the Tianjian sect dares to openly attack our sect, I will make them pay the price. Yun Yao, Tianqing, rest here for a while, then follow me to the Tianjian sect. With that, Chu Tianqing ordered the black-robed guard to summon the elders and deacons to the heaven-raising palace. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao retreated to the side and sat down to rest. After the previous battle, Ji Tianqing's true essence had been severely consumed, so he took out 2 pills and swallowed them, silently restoring his true essence. Although his heavenly origin star armor had a strong defensive effect, it consumed a large amount of true essence. With his current strength, he could only use the star armor for about half an hour every time he used it. Therefore, when he escaped from the Tianjian sect, he put the star armor back into the silver ball and put it in his space ring. The heaven-raising palace was dark and quiet. The 3 of them waited patiently. Although it was late at night, Chu Tianqing's order was quickly passed down. After about half an hour, the elders and deacons arrived at the heaven-raising palace one after another. Everyone was in a hurry, their faces full of anxiety and doubt. They didn't know what had happened. After a quarter of an hour, 5 elders and 9 deacons gathered in the heaven-raising palace. Chu Tianqing's face was solemn, and he told them what had happened in a low voice. The elders and deacons were shocked and angry when they heard what had happened. They cursed the Tianjian sect's leader with righteous indignation and vowed to kill the Tianjian sect and rescue Yender. Chu Tianqing didn't waste any time. He immediately led the elders and deacons out of the heaven-raising palace and rode on spirit beasts to the Tianjian sect. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also rode on spirit cranes and followed the crowd. More than a dozen powerhouses rode on spirit beasts and flew across the night sky as fast as lightning, rushing toward the Tianjian sect with murderous intent. Chu Tianqing's mount was a 4th-stage spirit beast, Dragon Eagle, whose strength was comparable to a powerhouse in the Origin Core realm. The Dragon Eagle was covered with dark red feathers. It was huge, with a wingspan of 40 meters. Chu Tianqing rode the Dragon Eagle and flew at the front of the team. The Dragon Eagle's body was flickering with dark red flames, illuminating the night sky and emitting a violent and overbearing aura. For hours later, the crowd arrived at the gate of the Tianjian sect. It was dawn, and the sky was just turning white. 30 white-robed guards were on duty at the gate of the Tianjian sect. They all looked solemn. Suddenly, more than a dozen powerful auras came from above their heads. The guards subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky and saw over a dozen figures that covered the sky descending from the sky. Swish! 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 16 huge birds landed on the square in front of the gate, bringing with them a raging wind. The ground was in a mess because of the wind, and sand and stones were flying everywhere. When the 2 guards recognized the newcomers, their faces changed. They turned around and ran to the top of the mountain to report the news. Just as the 2 of them turned around, 2 gigantic icy blue palms suddenly attacked them. Bang! Bang! The 2 of them were slapped to the ground, causing them to be seriously injured and pass out. The other 20 or so white-robed guards immediately pulled out their swords and stared at the newcomers with vigilant faces. The elders put away their spirit beasts and walked toward the gate of the Tianjian sect under the lead of Chu Tianqing. Chu Tianqing walked at the front, staring coldly ahead. He ignored the white-robed guards and walked directly to the top of the mountain. His face was as cold as ice, and his whole body emitted a terrifying murderous aura. The 20 or so white-robed guards were intimidated by his murderous aura, and none of them dared to stop him. After a while, Chu Tianqing led the crowd to the top of the mountain and stood in the square in front of the reception hall. Everyone looked around with cold eyes, only to see that the entire hall had collapsed and turned into ruins. The square on the top of the mountain was littered with broken bricks and wood shavings, as well as some broken and deformed lanterns. There were several big pits on the ground and numerous cracks. Chu Tiansheng and the elders and deacons didn't see the scene at the birthday banquet last night. But the ruins and the mess in front of them were enough to prove how fierce the fighting last night was and how critical the situation was. At this time, several black-robed deacons of the Tianjin sect rushed to the square with a large number of guards and confronted Chu Tiansheng and the others. Although there were more than 30 guards and they had the advantage in numbers, they all looked dignified and didn't dare to act rashly. Chu Tiansheng ignored the deacons and guards and looked into the depths of the palace. He channeled his energy and let out a deafening roar. "Gaoyi, get out here!" His roar, which was driven by the power of the Sky Origin stage, immediately covered a radius of dozens of miles and the surrounding mountains. Chapter 348. At dawn, the Heavenly Sword sect was completely silent. They were still in deep slumber. Chu Tiansheng's earth-shaking roar was like a thunderclap on a rainy night, waking everyone up with a start. In an instant, voices of shock, doubt, and anger rang out from the countless palaces and courtyards on the peaks of the Tianjin sect. After a long time, when the roar that reverberated in the sky dissipated, a dozen dazzling lights lit up in the depths of the palaces on the Divine Sword Peak. More than a dozen experts at the Origin Core stage and above rushed to the summit square as fast as lightning. A skinny figure with an aura as sharp as a sword also condensed a pair of wings with green true essence. He flew down from the sky and landed in the square. Whoosh! This figure wasn't very tall, but his aura was overbearing and sharp. It was the Tianjin sect's master, Gao Yi. He landed on the north side of the plaza. Many elders and deacons who had arrived after him immediately surrounded him, crowding him in the crowd. In a short time, 18 experts from the Tianjin sect arrived and confronted Chu Tiansheng and the others. The Tianjin sect's master was emitting a murderous aura. His face was as cold as ice, and he was clearly in an extremely irritable mood. Before the Tianjin sect's master could speak, Chu Tiansheng angrily glared at him and shouted in a cold voice, "Gao Yi, hand over Yen." The Tianjin sect's master looked at him coldly and sneered, "Chu Tiansheng, your disciple killed my disciple, Shi Wenyu, in front of everyone. I must avenge him. You want me to hand over that little bastard? Dream on." Chu Tiansheng furrowed his brows and shouted in a deep voice, "Gao Yi, you know very well why your disciple, Shi Wenyu, died. Everyone in the ancient star realm knows about your wild ambitions. All these years, you've been ambitious and vainly trying to replace my Sky Pillar sect. Who knows how many despicable and filthy things you've done in secret. I really didn't expect that you would frame my disciple just to find an excuse to start a war with my Sky Pillar sect. You're truly sinister and despicable, vicious to the extreme." Hearing these words, the Tianjin sect's master was so angry that he laughed and said with a sinister expression, "Ha ha. Chu Tiansheng, you're really twisting the truth and spouting nonsense. Last night at the birthday banquet, your disciple, Ji Tianxing, beat my disciple, Shi Wenyu, to death in front of everyone. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. You actually said that I schemed to frame your disciple? Did you think that I would kill my own disciple in order to frame your disciple? Chu Tiansheng, don't tell me that you dared to twist the truth and bully my Sky Sword sect just because you're the #1 sect in the Heavenly Stellar region? After the Tianjin sect's master, two men's sect. The Tianjin sect after last night's incident at the birthday banquet. The people from the other sects had left, but the people from these two sects had stayed behind. The Thousand Autumns sect master looked at Chu Tiansheng and said with an indifferent expression, "Sect Master Chu, your words are indeed absurd and ridiculous. I was there last night and saw the entire incident with my own eyes. I can confirm that it was Ji Tianxing who killed Shi Wenyu. Moreover, I also saw Shi Wenyu's corpse with my own eyes. He really did die from Ji Tianxing's palm strike." The true martial sect master nodded in agreement and said, "I also saw it with my own eyes. I also know that sect master Gao treated Shi Wenyu like his own son and nurtured him with all his heart. If sect master Gao was willing to sacrifice Shi Wenyu's life in order to frame Ji Tianxing, this kind of scheme of exchanging a life for a life is truly unbelievable. It's simply absurd." Chu Tianxing frowned and looked coldly at the Tianjin sect master, the Thousand Autumn Sect's sect master, and the True Martial Sect's sect master, remaining silent for a while. He thought to himself, Tianqing told me that he didn't have any motive to kill Shi Wenyu. He only used 70% of his strength. It's definitely not enough to kill Shi Wenyu. After Shi Wenyu died, the Tianjin sect's elders and black-armored guards immediately rushed into the hall. These people have been lying in ambush outside the hall, so they must have been prepared. Chu Tiansheng had analyzed the situation before and concluded that this was a conspiracy of the Tianjin sect. That was why he had rushed to the Tianjin sect that night. He wanted to question the Tianjin sect's sect master and save Yanber. At this time, the Tianjin sect's sect master saw that he was silent and shouted, Chu Tiansheng, the facts are all here. The two sect masters can also testify. You have nothing to say, right? Chu Tiansheng raised his head and looked at him with cold eyes. He shouted angrily, Gao Yi, in order to deal with our sect, you've really schemed. You actually dared to ally with the demon race. Even if you hid it well, who did you think you could hide it from? As he shouted, he coldly glanced at the Taoist Tianji beside the Tianjin sect's sect master. The Taoist Tianji's face was expressionless. He held the silver horsetail whisk in his hand and looked like a Taoist master. The Tianjin sect's sect master and several elders and deacons were stunned for a moment. Soon after, they all revealed cold smiles. Chu Tiansheng, I think you've lost your mind because of anger. The Tianjin sect's sect master shouted sternly, You're full of sophistry. In order to shirk responsibility and distort the facts, you can even say such nonsense. Our Tianjin sect is an orthodox sect that has been passed down for hundreds of years. We've always hated the cruel and vicious demon race to the bone. How could we ally ourselves with the demon race? Chu Tiansheng, I used to respect you as a person of character, but I didn't expect you to be such a despicable and vicious bastard. You dare to wantonly slander our Tianjin sect. I, Gao Yi, swear to the heavens that if my Tianjin sect colludes with the demon race, I, Gao Yi, will be struck by lightning and die without a burial place. My entire Tianjin sect will be annihilated. The Tianjin sect's sect master's voice was as loud as a bell. He angrily swore in front of everyone, arousing the blood of many elders and deacons. Even the dozens of guards were full of indignation. They stared at Chu Tiansheng and the others with righteous indignation. The Thousand Autumn sect master and the True Martial sect master sneered again and again. They looked at Chu Tiansheng with eyes full of contempt. Sect Master Chu, I really overestimated you. I didn't expect you to be such a despicable person. Hee, Sect Master Chu, in order to protect your disciples' crime, you didn't hesitate to fabricate lies and fabricate crimes to frame the Tianjin sect. You're really shameless. The Tianjin sect's elders and deacons also angrily criticized Chu Tiansheng, cursing him in their hearts for being despicable and shameless. Chu Tiansheng's expression was cold, but he didn't refute them. He looked deeply at the Tianjin sect's sect master, then stared at the Taoist priest Tianji for a moment. He thought to himself, judging from Gao Yi's reaction, it seems he didn't know about this at all. Taoist priest Tianji acted like an enlightened expert. If Yun Yao hadn't determined that he was a demon, even I wouldn't have been able to sense a trace of the demon race's aura. No wonder no one else noticed. Chapter 349. The reason why Chu Tiansheng had questioned the demon race was to clarify the situation. Was the Heavenly Sword sect colluding with the devil race, or had they been kept in the dark by the devil race and were being used? If the Tianjin sect had really fallen to the point of colluding with the demon race, the consequences would be unimaginable. No matter what, Chu Tiansheng would find a way to eradicate the Tianjin sect for the sake of the billions of people in the Tianjin region. But now it seemed that the Tianjin sect had no idea about this. Not only were Gao Yi and the elders kept in the dark, but even the people from the other sects did not notice anything strange. Chu Tiansheng was indeed full of anger and killing intent, but thinking of this, he quickly calmed down. At this time, Yun Yao said to him through sound transmission, Master, this is obviously a conspiracy of the demon race. The demon race set up this scheme to provoke the conflict between the Tianjin sect and our sect, so that the Tianjin sect and our sect will fight and kill each other. Master, this matter concerns the safety of the entire Tianjin region. You must treat it seriously. If our sect and the Tianjin sect fight, Both sides will be injured, and the demon race will take advantage of this opportunity to invade. At that time, if the demon race breaks the seal of our sect, the people of the Tianshan region will be plunged into misery and suffering. Yun Yao's sound transmission could not only be heard by Chu Tiansheng, but also by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing also quickly said to Chu Tiansheng through sound transmission, "Master, for the sake of the big picture, our sect must not fight with the Tianjian sect at this time. Otherwise, it will be exactly what the demon race wants, and they will be able to reap the benefits." Chu Tianxing's face was solemn for a moment, then he nodded and said through sound transmission, "Yes, you two have seen through it very clearly. Master also thinks the same." At this time, the Tianjian sect leader saw that he was silent, so he shouted in a stern voice, "Chu Tiansheng, what do you have to say now?" Chu Tian looked at him coldly and said in a solemn tone, "Gao Yi, regarding the matter of the demon race, this king will not argue with you today. In the future, this king will definitely give you an explanation. I won't hold you accountable for what happened last night for the time being, but you have to release Yender now." Hearing his words, Gao Yi and the other elders all thought that they had misheard, and their faces were filled with astonishment. A moment later, Gao Yu sneered and shouted, "Chu Tiansheng, have you gone senile? Now is not the time for you to pursue the matter. You have to give me an explanation. If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, my Tianjian sect will suppress your Sky Pillar sect and seek justice for my disciple." Chu Tiansheng had to consider the overall situation, so he had no choice but to suppress his anger and ask in a deep voice, "Gao Yi, what kind of explanation do you want?" The true goal of the Tianjian sect master was to use this matter as an excuse to openly and confidently declare war on the Sky Pillar sect. However, in front of the sect masters of the Thousand Autumns sect and the true martial sect, he couldn't speak his true thoughts. He coldly glanced at Ji Tianxing and immediately came up with an idea. "Chu Tiansheng, a life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. This is a matter of course. Your disciple, Ji Tianxing, killed my disciple, Shi Wenyu. I want him to pay with his life. Hand over Ji Tianxing. I want to use his blood and head as a sacrifice to Wenyu's soul in heaven." Chu Tiansheng and the other Sky Pillar sect elders' expressions suddenly changed, and their eyes were filled with anger. "You want me to hand over Ji Tianxing? Impossible. Gao Yi, give up on that idea." Chu Tianxing's expression was cold as he angrily shouted. The Tianjian sect master had long expected that Chu Tianxing wouldn't agree, and this was exactly what he wanted. He angrily shouted, "Everyone can see that it's not the Tianjian sect that's being aggressive, but Chu Tianxing who is being rude and unreasonable, using his power to bully others. Chu Tianxing, since you're not willing to compromise, then we have nothing to talk about. Go back to the Sky Pillar sect and wait. My Tianjian sect's elite troops will slaughter their way to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days and demand justice." The negotiations between the Tianjian sect master and Chu Tianxing had broken down, and the two sects were like fire and water, about to officially go to war. At this time, Ji Tianxing suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of the Sky Pillar sect's people. He expressionlessly looked at the Tianjian sect master and said in a solemn tone, "Sect Master Gao, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Since Shi Wenyu died because of me, and you insist that I killed him, then I'll pay with my life and settle this grudge. In front of all the sect masters, I, Ji Tianxing, will take your palm. After this palm, if I die, I'll pay with my life for Shi Wenyu's. If I'm still alive, then we'll settle this grudge. This matter will end here, and the Tianjian sect won't continue to pester me. What do you think?" Ji Tianxing's voice was sonorous and resonated throughout the entire mountain peak like a great bell. After hearing his words, the faces of the dozens of martial artists present changed dramatically, and they all cried out in alarm. Chu Tiansheng, Yun Yao, and the others' faces changed dramatically, and they hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Tianxing, don't be reckless. Junior brother Tianxing, you absolutely can't do this. You'll die." Tianxing, Gao Yi is a Sky Origin stage expert. He can smash a mountain with his full strength. How can you block it? Absolutely not. Tianxing, you're the mainstay of our Sky Pillar sect. You're our future hope and a top genius. How can you use your life to pay for Shi Wenyu's?" The Tianjian sect master and the others all had complicated expressions on their faces as they discussed this matter incessantly. Ji Tianqing is indeed young and impetuous. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Humph! This brat is so arrogant. He's digging his own grave. He's just a Tongxian stage martial artist. Even a mountain wouldn't be able to block Sect Master Gao's palm. Sect Master Gao, since Ji Tianqing wants to die, then you should fulfill his wish. Kill him to appease Shi Wenyu's soul in heaven. The Tianjian sect master frowned as he pondered. His face was somewhat ferocious. His original intention was not as simple as killing Ji Tianqing. He wanted to destroy the entire Sky Pillar sect. However, Ji Tianqing had stepped forward bravely and proposed this method in front of everyone, immediately disrupting his plans. If he didn't accept it, then it would be clear that he would continue to pester them and use Shi Wenyu's death as an excuse to attack the Sky Pillar sect. In this way, the Tianjian sect wouldn't be in the right and wouldn't be able to gather the other sects to besiege the Sky Pillar sect. However, if he accepted this method, he would at most be able to kill Ji Tianqing with a single palm to avenge Shi Wenyu. After Ji Tianqing died, this matter would be settled. The Tianjian sect would have no reason to declare war on the Sky Pillar sect. For a moment, the Tianjian sect master was caught in a dilemma. It was difficult to choose. At this time, Chu Tiantian looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression and said in a solemn tone, "Tianqing, Master forbids you from making this decision on your own. Yan is Master's disciple. You are also Master's disciple. Master will never let anything happen to either of you." Ji Tianqing also said in a solemn tone, "Master, this is the best way to resolve the grievances between the two sects and maintain the overall situation." Chapter 350. Chu Tiantian looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression. His mood suddenly became very complicated. He felt gratified and happy, but he was also full of worry. He sighed silently in his heart. Sigh. Tianqing, oh Tianqing, you're only a 17-year-old boy. How can you be so outstanding? You're talented, righteous, calm, and wise. You're brave and resourceful. You're only 17 years old. Why do you have to shoulder such a heavy grudge and shoulder such a heavy responsibility at such a time of crisis? You've only been in the sect for less than half a year, but you have the courage and responsibility to stand shoulder to shoulder with Yun Yao. If something were to happen to you, how could Master not be heartbroken? Chu Tiantian had lived for more than 100 years. In his life, he had met many different kinds of people and seen many talented geniuses. However, there were only a dozen people who could catch his eye, and Ji Tianqing was one of them. He valued Ji Tianqing not only because of Ji Tianqing's outstanding talent, but also because of Ji Tianqing's heart. He saw through Ji Tianqing very clearly. Not only did he have outstanding talent, but his martial heart was also very firm, calm, and wise. Most importantly, in this merciless world of martial arts, most people were heartless, selfish, and regarded other people's lives as nothing more than grass. However, Ji Tianqing could still maintain his original heart. He was upright, kind, and righteous. He also had the chivalrous demeanor of helping the world. This was really rare and commendable. Chu Tiantian's mood became heavier and heavier. He felt even more ashamed of Ji Tianqing. The grudge between the Tianjian sect and the Sky Pillar sect, the overall situation of the ancient Star Realm and the Tianqian territory, these were things that he and the elders of the Sky Pillar sect should be worried about. In the end, he and the elders were helpless. Ji Tianqing had to step forward bravely and sacrifice himself to resolve the grudge. Thinking of this, Chu Tiantian secretly made up his mind. If Ji Tianqing could survive this calamity, he would definitely nurture Ji Tianqing into the next sect master of the Sky Pillar sect. If Ji Tianqing was killed by Gao Yi, he would bury Ji Tianqing with the highest ceremony and treat Ji Tianqing's family members well. Because this was what the Sky Pillar sect owed him. He would also make sure that the Tianjian sect would no longer have a foothold in the Star Ancient Realm. At the same time, a purple-robed elder escorted the heavily injured Yan to the crowd in the square. Yan saw Chu Tianqing, Ji Tianqing, and the others. She learned that Ji Tianqing was going to be hit by the Tianjian sect's sect master. He tried his best to wave his hand at Ji Tianqing. With a pale face and a weak voice, he shouted, "Senior Martial Brother Tianqing. No. I'm the Crown Prince of the Fire Tribe. The Tianjian sect doesn't dare to kill me. Don't worry about me. Just leave." Chu Tianqing, Ji Tianqing, and the others' gazes immediately fell on Yan. Seeing that Yan robe was stained with blood, his face was pale, and his spirit was dispirited. Everyone was distressed and angry. Ji Tianqing also couldn't bear it. He said firmly to Yen, "Don't worry, senior martial brother will be fine. I will definitely save you." "No, senior martial brother Tianqing, don't worry about me." Yen Er's eyes were filled with tears. He desperately shook his head and refused. At this time, the Tianjin sect master finally made up his mind under the instigation of the two sect masters and several elders. When he heard Yen persuading Ji Tianqing, he winked at the purple-robed elder. The purple-robed elder immediately understood. He raised his hand and knocked Yen unconscious. After Yen fell into a coma and calmed down, the Tianjin sect master turned to Ji Tianqing and shouted, "Ji Tianqing, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Today, I will make you pay with your life for Shi Wenyu." He would find another excuse to declare war on the Sky Pillar sect in the future. But today, he would first kill Ji Tianqing to pay for Shi Wenyu's life. He would also get rid of a top genius of the Sky Pillar sect and eliminate a major threat. With this thought in mind, the Tianjin sect master stepped out of the crowd and came to the square. Ji Tianqing also walked to the center of the square expressionlessly and stood 20 steps away from the Tianjin sect master. "Sect Master Gao, since you have agreed, please remember the agreement. The people of the various sects have witnessed it with their own eyes." The Heavenly Sword sect master sneered with a sinister look on his face. "Cut the crap. Prepare to die." As he spoke, he mobilized his life's cultivation and circulated his majestic true essence, gathering it in the palm of his right hand. At that moment, the Tianjin sect's outer sect elder suddenly walked quickly to the square and said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master, please wait. Let this subordinate examine Ji Tianqing first. He dared to ask to take your palm, so it's very likely that he has some kind of armor or defensive treasure hidden on his body." The outer sect elder's words were exactly what many people were thinking. Many of the Tianjin sect's elders and deacons believed that Ji Tianqing must have something to rely on since he dared to arrogantly propose such a method. Ji Tianqing frowned, but didn't say anything. He stood still and allowed the outer sect elder to examine him. However, the Tianjin sect's sect master sneered disdainfully and waved his hand to stop the outer sect elder. "There's no need to examine him. Ji Tianqing is just an ant in the profound comprehension realm. Even if he wears a Tian origin-grade armor, it's impossible for him to block this sect master's palm. He will die without a doubt. Not even dregs will remain." The outer sect elder nodded silently and quickly retreated into the crowd. In the next moment, the Tianjin sect's sect master gathered all of his power into his right palm. His entire body burst out with a monstrous killing intent and five-colored brilliance. In the palm of his right hand, a brilliant five-colored true essence also emerged and condensed into a giant five-colored palm the size of a wash basin. An incomparably violent energy burst out, causing a gust of wind to blow across the square. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The ground was also trembling. Even the entire divine sword peak was shaking slightly, as if it couldn't bear the heavy burden. Even the originally bright sky was suddenly filled with wind and clouds, and layers of dark clouds appeared out of nowhere. The Tianjin sect's sect master was still accumulating power, and the five-colored giant palm's power was still increasing. He hadn't even launched an attack yet, but he had already created such a frightening vision of heaven and earth. Suddenly, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Chu Tianqing's expression also changed. He shouted with grief and indignation, "Damn it! Gao Yi, that bastard, actually used the secret technique of 5-cheese unification and wants to use the heaven-shattering palm." The secret technique of 5-cheese unification was a top-secret technique that could greatly increase one's combat power. Only profound comprehension realm experts who had mastered the 5 elements could use this secret technique to increase their combat power by 2 or 3 times in a short period of time. The heaven-shattering palm was also a profound comprehension realm palm technique. With one palm strike, it could tear apart the sky and shatter mountains and rivers. Its power was incomparably terrifying. With the strength of the Tianjin sect's sect master, even a casual palm strike could instantly kill a large number of profound comprehension realm martial artists. In order to completely kill Ji Tianqing, he actually used the secret technique of 5-cheese unification and used his most powerful killing move. He didn't give Ji Tianqing any chance of survival. Chapter 351. The people of the Tianjin sect were excited as they waited to enjoy the tragic scene of Ji Tianqing being blasted into smithereens. On the other hand, the people of the Sky Pillar sect clenched their fists in grief and indignation. Their eyes were bloodshot. Suddenly, the sect master of the Tianjin sect roared as he raised his right palm and slammed it toward Ji Tianqing, who was 20 steps away. Sky-shattering palm. Little bastard, I'll kill you. At that moment, the huge five-colored palm, which carried a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and earth, slammed toward Ji Tianqing. He was still expressionless, without the slightest fear or retreat. His eyes were fixed on the five-colored palm as his nerves were stretched taut to the limit. The moment the sky-shattering palm hit him, a huge black shadow suddenly burst out from his body and soared into the sky. Buzz! A humming sound shook the sky as a huge sword steel, which was thousands of feet tall, appeared. This sword steel was like a cold and lonely mountain that stood in the middle of the square and completely covered the sky. The whole square was plunged into darkness and shrouded in a boundless aura of death. The cold aura of death made the square feel as if winter had arrived. The temperature dropped to the extreme, and everyone felt a chill run down their backs as they shivered. Ji Tianqing's figure was nowhere to be seen. He was completely covered by the domineering giant sword steel that was filled with the aura of death. He was protected by the towering black sword steel as he watched the five-colored palm hit the giant sword steel. Boom! A loud sound that shook the whole world exploded. The loud sound reverberated across a radius of 100 miles. The entire divine sword peak was trembling and on the verge of collapsing. The terrifying power contained in the sky-shattering palm was completely unleashed, releasing five-colored flames that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Many martial artists in the square retreated to the edge of the square and protected their bodies with true essence shields. The collision between the five-colored palm and the black sword steel produced a violent shock wave that formed visible five-colored air waves that spread in all directions and swept across the entire mountain peak. The ground of the square burst open from the tremors, and huge gullies appeared one after another, extending out dense cracks. The dozen or so palaces and mansions nearby were also shaking because of the blast. Countless cracks appeared on the walls, and countless bricks and tiles fell from the roofs. Even the forests on the mountain peak were swept away by the five-colored shockwave and turned into a mess. Small trees and weeds were uprooted, and towering trees were snapped in half, collapsing with a loud crash. More than half of the Divine Sword Peak was devastated, as if it was the end of the world. Countless disciples of the Tianjin sect fled in terror. Many experts and powerhouses in the square were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Everyone was shocked by the terrifying power of the heaven-collapsing palm, but they were also shocked by the mysterious huge sword steel that appeared out of nowhere. Daoist Tianji, who was in the crowd, raised his head to look at the black sword steel. His expression changed dramatically, and his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Sword spirit. It's the soul of the divine sword. It actually still exists. Could it be in Ji Tianqing's body? At this moment, Daoist Tianji's mood was extremely complicated. He suddenly understood a lot of things, and felt excited about it. The sect leader of the Tianjin sect also looked at the huge sword steel in surprise, forgetting his anger for a moment. After a long time, the five-colored flames that covered the sky and the sun dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated between heaven and earth also gradually disappeared. Only then did everyone see the scene in the square clearly. Only to see that the towering and enormous black sword steel that stood between the heavens and the earth had already disappeared. In the square, which was full of cracks and gullies, Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe, was standing tall and straight in the square. His body looked intact, and there were no obvious injuries on his body. It seemed that he hadn't been seriously injured. However, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and blood kept gushing out of his mouth and nose, dripping onto his white robe, dyeing it red. He tried his best to stay conscious, and his body trembled slightly. He didn't say a word, and looked coldly at the sect leader of the Tianjin sect. However, he had already suffered extremely serious internal injuries, and his internal organs had been displaced. At the same time, the voice of the sword soul burial of heaven sounded in his mind. Boy, I haven't recovered my vitality yet, and can only help you block 70% of the heaven-shattering palm's power. I've done my best. Burial of Heaven's voice was hoarse and weak, and it no longer had the mysterious and domineering aura of the past. Obviously, in order to help Ji Tianqing block that palm, he had exhausted all his strength and was seriously injured. Ji Tianqing replied in his mind, "Burial of heaven, thank you." After resolving this grudge, the Tianjin sect won't be able to start a war with the Sky Pillar sect for the time being. I can still buy some time. I will definitely improve my strength as soon as possible and get the Heavenly Star bead as soon as possible. Burial of Heaven replied weakly, and then fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing looked coldly at the sect leader of the Tianjin sect, and his heart was filled with monstrous hatred. He roared in his heart, "Gao Yi! I, Ji Tianqing, will remember this palm strike in my heart. When I merge with the Kenshin bloodline in the future, I will definitely return today's grudge tenfold." At this time, the people in the square finally came to their senses when they saw Ji Tianqing's appearance. Countless people revealed looks of shock as they let out cries of disbelief. "Oh my God! How is this possible? Ji Tianqing didn't die? Even his body is unscathed? This is incredible. What kind of treasure does Ji Tianqing have that could block the full force of a Heaven Origin expert's palm strike? What is that majestic sword-shaped stone tablet? Even if it's a Heaven Origin level weapon or treasure, it can't be so indomitable and domineering. No wonder Ji Tianqing dared to block sect leader Gao's palm strike. He has such an amazing treasure on him. That's why he's so fearless." Everyone was shocked, and they couldn't believe or understand it at all. The sect leader of the Tianjin sect couldn't accept this result either. His face was extremely ugly, and his heart was filled with monstrous anger and murderous intent. He stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and roared hysterically, "Ji Tianqing, how can you not die? You have a secret treasure to protect you today, but sooner or later, I will smash you into pieces and let you die without a burial place." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and didn't say anything. The next moment, Yun Yao rushed to his side like a gust of wind. She looked at him anxiously and cried with joy. "Junior Tianqing, you're still alive. That's great." No one had expected that Yun Yao, who was always cold and aloof, would lose her composure at this moment. Her clear eyes were also covered with a layer of mist, and her eyes were filled with excitement. Then, Chu Tianqing and several other elders came over to check on Ji Tianqing's injuries with concern. Chapter 352. The enmity between the two sects had been resolved, and had been rescued. Ji Tianqing could no longer withstand his injuries and spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff! He closed his eyes and lost consciousness as he fell to the ground with his face facing the sky. Yun Yao, who was the closest to him, suddenly let out a worried cry. She quickly stretched out her arms and hugged him in her arms. Chu Tianqing and the several elders' complexions changed dramatically, and their hearts were in their throats again. The spiritual medicine elder quickly checked Ji Tianqing's condition and transferred his true essence to him to suppress his injuries. Chu Tianqing's face was as gloomy as ice. He turned to look at the Tianjin sect's master and shouted in a deep voice, "Gao Yi, this king's disciple Ji Tianqing has taken your palm in public. This matter ends here. If you continue to cause trouble and pester me endlessly, this king will never let you off." The people of the Tianjin sect all thought that Chu Tianqing would leave with the Sky Pillar sect's people after dropping this sentence. But no one thought that Chu Tianqing would shout again in a cold tone, "The enmity between our two sects has been resolved. But now, it's time to settle the enmity between you and me. Gao Yi, you want justice for your disciple, Shi Wenyu, by hitting my disciple, Tianqing. Now, I want justice for my 3 disciples. You have to take 3 of my moves." Having said that, Chu Tianqing didn't care whether the Tianjin sect's master agreed or not. He strode towards the Tianjin sect's master with a towering killing intent. The Tianjin sect's master's complexion suddenly changed. His eyes were full of anger as he shouted, "Chu Tianqing, you're pestering me endlessly. You're being unreasonable." Just now, in order to kill Ji Tianqing with one palm, he used the 5 Qis unification secret art and the heaven collapsing palm, which consumed about 40% of his strength. At this time, he was a bit weak and only had 60% of his strength left. How could he block 3 of Chu Tianqing's attacks? Chu Tianqing sneered with a cold expression. "You can get justice for your disciple, but can I do the same for mine? Reason. Why don't you talk to my fist?" Then he released his spiritual sense, which covered the sky and the earth, and locked onto the aura of the Tianjin sect master. His whole body surged with monstrous true essence. An invisible and majestic pressure immediately spread out in all directions, enveloping the entire square. The faces of the martial artists from various sects on the square suddenly changed. They fled in all directions, trying to get as far away from the square as possible. The ordinary martial artists were running wildly, while the elders and deacons of the Sky Pillar sect were riding spirit beasts and flying into the sky, overlooking the plaza on the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, all the warriors in the square ran away, leaving only Chu Tiansheng and the Tianjin sect master. Everyone knew that the two of them were Sky Origin stage powerhouses, one of the top powerhouses in the Tianjin region. The battle between the two of them was bound to be devastating, and its power was terrifying. If they didn't leave the plaza in time, they would be killed by the aftermath of the battle. That would be an unjust death. At this point, what was done could not be undone. No matter how angry the Tianjin sect master was, he had to face Chu Tiansheng's anger. The Tianjin sect master stood proudly in the middle of the square and shouted loudly, "Chu Tiansheng, don't think that I will be afraid of you just because you are the leader of the Tianjin region. You and I will fight sooner or later anyway. Today, I want to see how much real talent you have to be so arrogant." As he spoke, the Tianjin sect master accumulated his life's power and condensed an oval 5-colored light shield around his body. 1,000 peaks of 5 elements shield. This was one of the Sky Origin stage 5 elements secret techniques. It condensed the power of the 5 elements and turned it into a light shield with very strong defensive power. Chu Tiansheng saw that the Tianjin sect master was facing a great enemy, and he couldn't help but sneer contemptuously. "Gao Yi, I will let you see what the real heaven-breaking palm is. The first palm is to seek justice for my disciple, Yun Yao." As his voice fell, he suddenly raised his right hand and gathered 120% of his power in the palm of his hand. A huge 5-colored giant palm fiercely shot out. At that moment, the square within a kilometer radius was dazzled by the 5-colored light. The air in this area was also squeezed out, and the whole square became a vacuum. The invisible and terrifying pressure was like a 1,000-foot mountain falling from the sky, fiercely suppressing the Tianjin sect master. The Tianjin sect master also waved his palms with all his strength, and a pair of huge 5-colored palm shadows blasted toward Chu Tiansheng. "Chu Tiansheng, I have practiced the heaven-breaking palm for 30 years. Do I need you to teach me? You are too arrogant." As his voice fell, he struck out with a pair of giant palms, which collided with Chu Tiansheng's heaven-breaking palm. Bang! In the earth-shattering noise, the Tianjin sect master's palm shadows were smashed into pieces and dissipated. The heaven-breaking palm erupted with destructive power, bursting with 5-colored flames that covered the square within a kilometer radius. The Tianjin sect master's figure was instantly covered by the heaven-breaking palm. The 1,000 peaks of 5 elements shield, which was protecting him, couldn't withstand the terrifying power of the heaven-breaking palm and shattered with a cracking sound. The Tianjin sect master's face changed dramatically. He was hit by the heaven-breaking palm and fell to the ground, letting out a painful groan. The violent 5-colored shockwave spread out and swept across the entire mountain peak in an instant. Dozens of palaces and mansions on the mountain peak were razed to the ground in the blink of an eye. Wherever the 5-colored airwaves passed by, the dense woods were minced into dregs. The splendid palaces and mansions collapsed directly, turning into broken bricks and ruins. Not only that, but the whole Divine Sword Peak was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. A huge gully appeared on the mountain wall, and a huge amount of rocks and dust fell down from the sky. The ground on the mountain peak was covered with cracks and gullies, and dust rose into the air. After a long time, the dust gradually dissipated. Many warriors hiding in the distance finally saw the situation on the mountain peak square. The square was in ruins and almost didn't exist anymore. It had become a huge pit with a radius of a kilometer. At the bottom of the pit, the Tianjin sect master was lying in a pile of rubble. His body was covered with dust and debris, and his face was covered with dust. He struggled to jump out of the pit and stood at the edge of the square. He cursed furiously, "Chu Tiansheng, you bastard son of a bitch. You." Before he could finish his words, Chu Tiansheng's cold and ruthless roar came from the other side of the square. "Gao Yi, take my second move. This punch will bring justice to my disciple, Yan Er." Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. As Chu Tianqing's voice fell, a huge golden fist shadow, carrying an unstoppable momentum, blasted toward the Tianjin sect master. If one looked closely, the golden fist shadow condensed into the shape of an ancient divine elephant. Legend has it that in ancient times, divine dragons and divine elephants were the most powerful divine beasts in the world, and were regarded as the symbol of strength. A divine elephant could hold up a star and travel in the vast starry sky. The Dragon Elephant Divine Fist that Chu Tianqing used was a set of Tian Yuan level fist techniques that focused on strength. The huge golden fist shadow condensed into an ancient divine elephant that was 100 meters long and 40 meters tall, and instantly drowned the figure of the Tianjin sect master. The Tianjin sect master was injured, and his strength was greatly reduced. He had no time to dodge, and could only condense a shield of vital essence to protect himself. Boom! Another earth-shattering sound burst out, echoing in the sky and shaking the entire Tianjin sect. The golden divine elephant's shadow hit the Tianjin sect master, shattering his vital essence shield in an instant. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. The entire divine sword peak shook violently, and the mountain peak completely collapsed. Kacha-kacha. Chapter 353. The summit of the Divine Sword Peak had turned into ruins. The few patches of lush forest had long since become bare, leaving only broken branches, withered leaves, and wood dregs all over the ground. Not only that, but the mountain peak with a radius of a few thousand meters had also been divided into dozens of small areas by numerous ravines. The areas close to the mountain had collapsed, causing dust and gravel to roll down the mountain. The loud rumbling continued for a long time without stopping. In the center of the mountain peak, there used to be a magnificent palace. But now the palace had long since disappeared, leaving behind only ruins. In the middle of the ruins, there was a huge crater. This crater was created by the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. With a rustling sound, the sect master of the Tianjin sect crawled out of the crater. He was in ragged clothes, with disheveled hair and a dirty face. At this moment, he was covered in dust and looked extremely ugly. No one could recognize him just by looking at his appearance. Moreover, he had suffered a serious internal injury from the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth and nose, and he staggered a little. Chu Tianqing, you bastard who deserves to be hacked to death. I'm going to kill you. The sect master of the Tianjin sect stood on the ruins and roared at the top of his lungs. He was so angry that he was about to go berserk. At this moment, Chu Tianqing's cold voice came from the ruins 100 meters in front of him. Gaoyi, take my third move. I'll let you see the true 5-cheese unification. With this strike, I will seek justice for my disciple Tianxing. Tianluo Axe. As Chu Tianqing's voice fell, in the black clouds above the mountain peak, a giant 5-colored palm suddenly appeared, blocking out the sun and covering the sky. The giant palm that was 100 meters wide was obviously formed by Chu Tianqing using the 5-cheese unification secret technique. It contained a terrifying power that could destroy everything. Since this move was called Tianluo Axe, it didn't come down from the head but from the side. The 5-colored palm was like a giant axe that could split heaven and earth. It cut through the layers of dark clouds and fell from the sky to hit the sect master of the Tianjin sect. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom that shook the universe, the 5-colored giant palm struck the mountain peak ruthlessly. At that moment, the entire Divine Sword Peak started to shake violently. Countless amounts of dust and gravel collapsed. Not only that, but the entire mountain peak was also split into 2 halves by the palm. The Divine Sword Peak could no longer withstand the attacks of the Sky Origin Stage cultivators. It was split into 2 halves and collapsed with a rumbling sound. For a time, the sound of mountains collapsing reverberated throughout the area within a radius of 100 miles. The ground around Divine Sword Peak was shaking violently. The nearby mountain peaks, which were also the territory of the Tianjin sect, started to tremble and shake. They were greatly affected. The destruction of the Divine Sword Peak caused the Tianjin sect's mountain guarding array to be damaged. The array that covered 100 miles of the sky also became fragmented and full of loopholes. Heaven and earth were filled with a thick layer of dust, flying in the air for a long time without dissipating. Countless disciples of the Tianjin sect were scared out of their wits. They ran away from the Divine Sword Peak in fear. Although, after a quarter of an hour, the deafening noise slowly subsided. Only half of the divine sword peak had collapsed. In the end, only half of the mountain peak remained. However, the main peak had been completely destroyed. What was the point of leaving behind a 1,000-meter-tall pile of rubble? The martial artists all around witnessed the destruction of the divine sword peak with their own eyes. They were so shocked that they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Especially the people from the Qianqiu sect and the Zhenwu sect. They had witnessed Chu Tianqing's terrifying strength with their own eyes. They were so shocked that they felt cold all over. They were very glad that it was the Tianjian sect that had provoked the sky-bearing sect. If it had been them, the foundation of their sect would have been destroyed long ago. At the same time, the sect leader of the Tianjian sect crawled out of the rubble covered in blood. His injuries were extremely severe. His internal organs were severely damaged. He was bleeding profusely from his 7 orifices. His strength had also dropped to its limit. The blood mixed with the dust and turned into a dark red mud that covered his entire body. He lay in the rubble, panting violently. He was like a wild dog that had rolled in a muddy pond. His miserable state was indescribable. At this time, Chu Tianqing condensed a pair of flaming wings and flew above his head. He shouted with a dignified expression, "Gao Yi. 3 moves have passed. Our grievances are settled. However, remember this. My sky-bearing sect has been able to stand in the ancient star realm for thousands of years. Our foundation is not as simple as you think. I am in charge of the Tianqian region. I am willing to let the Tianjian sect stay in the ancient star realm. Only then will the Tianjian sect have a foothold here. Otherwise, if I want to destroy your Tianjian sect, there will be no place for the Tianjian sect in the entire Tianqian region. Today, I am only giving you a warning. If you dare to deal with my sky-bearing sect in the future, I will definitely take your head." The Tianjian sect master lay in the rubble and tried his best to open his blurry eyes. He glared at Chu Tianqing in the sky with resentment and clenched his teeth without saying a word. He finally understood. Although he and Chu Tianqing were both in the heaven origin stage, Chu Tianqing's strength was several levels higher than his. Now that he had fallen into such a miserable state, no matter how angry he would only be humiliating himself. Chu Tianqing coldly glanced at the Tianjian sect master, then turned and flew away with a flick of his sleeve. Swoosh! He flew to the sky 1,000 meters away and came to the side of the elders and deacons of the sky-bearing sect. "Let's go!" Chu Tianqing shouted in a low voice. He released his mount, the dragon eagle, and rode it into the distance. The elders and deacons also carried the unconscious Ji Tianqing and Yan and rode their spirit beasts to follow Chu Tianqing back to the sky-bearing sect. In the rubble of the divine sword peak, the Tianjian sect master stared at the people of the sky-bearing sect leaving. He was extremely angry and manic. He gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice. "Chu Tianqing, sooner or later, I will wring your head off and use it as a chamber pot. I will also kill everyone in the sky-bearing sect, not even a chicken or a dog. Only the blood of everyone in the sky-bearing sect can wash away the humiliation I suffered today." After the Heavenly Sword sect master viciously swore, he forcefully endured his injuries and struggled to get up, limping down the mountain. The divine sword peak was destroyed, and the entire Tianjian sect was in a mess. Countless handymen and disciples rushed over. Many elders and deacons were busy instructing the handymen and disciples to dig up the rocks and clean up the rubble of the divine sword peak. The Tianjian sect master had just taken a few steps when guest elder Huangfu ran over with an anxious face and quickly reached out to support him. The sky-bearing sect is simply arrogant and overbearing. They have gone too far. Sect master, Chu Tianqing controls the entire Tianqian region. It's not appropriate for us to fight them head-on for the time being. Chapter 354. The Divine Sword Peak had been destroyed, and the Tianjian sect was in chaos. For hours had passed, but the sect still hadn't calmed down. Tens of thousands of odd-job workers and thousands of disciples were busy cleaning up the ruins of the Divine Sword Peak. Many elders and deacons were present to direct them. The other peaks were deserted, and it was hard to see anyone walking around. In a quiet palace on the peak where the Spirit Beast Garden was located, a woman was standing in a room. The Blood Moon Infanta was in a room. She was standing by the window and gazing outside. She was lost in thought. When the divine sword peak was in chaos, she escaped from the back of the mountain and hid here. Although she didn't know what had happened, she knew that something big had happened in the Tianjin sect. At this moment, the door was opened, and the Taoist Tianji walked in quickly. The Blood Moon Princess was awakened, and she turned her head to look at him. Seeing the Taoist Tianji's strange expression and his eyes shining, the Blood Moon Princess raised her eyebrows and asked, "Great priest, what happened? Why are you so happy?" The high priest came to the front of the Blood Moon Infanta and revealed an excited expression. He lowered his voice and said, "Infanta, we are really lucky today." "Ha ha ha." The Blood Moon Princess frowned and looked at him. She was confused and asked, "Lucky? The divine sword peak has been destroyed. Why are you so happy?" "High priest, what's going on?" The great priest smiled and said excitedly, "The divine sword peak was destroyed by Chu Tianxing. This is the Tianjin sect's business, and I don't feel bad about it. What made me happy is related to the revival of our tribe." The Blood Moon Infanta's interest was immediately aroused. She hurriedly asked, "High priest, what's the matter?" The great priest stroked his white beard and smiled complacently. He said slowly, "Ji Tianqing proposed in front of everyone that he would like to be hit by the Tianjin sect's sect master and use this method to resolve the grudge. However, when the Tianjin sect's sect master hit him, a giant sword steel, which was thousands of feet tall, emerged from his body. I sensed an ancient and special aura from the sword steel. It's the sword soul, the aura of the soul of the divine sword." The Blood Moon Infanta was stunned when she heard the news. It took her a moment to react, and her eyes were filled with shock. "Sword soul? High priest, do you mean the soul of Kenshin's sword?" "That's right." The high priest nodded and said playfully, "Princess, do you remember? When we first met Ji Tianqing when we infiltrated the sky-bearing sect, he was locked in a stone room. You entered the stone room to kill him, but a mysterious black hole emerged from his body and devoured most of your power." The Blood Moon Infanta sneered and said, "That time, 60% of my power was devoured. How could I forget that?" "High priest, do you mean that the mysterious black hole that devoured my power is the soul of the divine sword?" "That's right." The high priest sneered and said, "When I sensed the aura of the heavenly star bead from Ji Tianqing's body, it was also because of the soul of the divine sword. Ji Tianqing was only a lowly human youth, but he was able to grow so quickly in just a few months because of the soul of the divine sword. In short, the soul of the divine sword was hidden in Ji Tianqing's body, which made him so special." The Blood Moon Infanta finally understood the series of events after hearing the high priest's explanation. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she waved her fist and said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect the truth to be so unbelievable. Since the soul of the divine sword is in Ji Tianqing's body, I will find an opportunity to capture him. The soul of the divine sword must know the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead and all of Kenshin's secrets." The Blood Moon Infanta couldn't help but rub her fists as she spoke, eager to give it a try. The high priest glanced at her and waved his hand. "Infanta, you should give up on this plan. Ji Tianqing used the soul of the divine sword to block the all-out attack of the Tianjin sect's sect master. He was only seriously injured and didn't die. Even the Tianjin sect's sect master couldn't deal with the soul of the divine sword. How can you capture Ji Tianqing? Moreover, Ji Tianqing was seriously injured and was taken back by the Sky Pillar sect for treatment. The Sky Pillar sect's people will definitely protect him strictly. You won't have a chance to do anything." The Blood Moon Infanta understood that the high priest's words were reasonable, and she clenched her teeth in anger. "Then what should we do? We know that the soul of the divine sword is in Ji Tianqing's body, but we can't do anything to him?" The high priest shook his head and revealed an unfathomable smile. "Infanta, I'm treading on thin ice now. I'm carefully sneaking into the Tianjin sect, and I don't dare to leave any traces. You can't easily show yourself, and you can't deal with Ji Tianqing personally. You and I don't have any soldiers or subordinates, so it's impossible for us to accomplish this task. The only thing we can do now is to report to the Demon King and let him make the decision." The Blood Moon Infanta's eyes lit up at the mention of the Blood Demon King. "Yes, I have to leave the Ancient Star Realm as soon as possible and return to the headquarters to report this news to my father. With my father's strength, as long as he enters the Ancient Star Realm, he will definitely be able to capture Ji Tianqing and obtain the soul of the divine sword." The high priest smiled and nodded. "That's right. It's time to ask the Demon King to come out. We've been planning in the ancient star realm for so long, and everything is ready. We're just waiting for the Demon King to take command. Soon, not only will we be able to capture Ji Tianqing and obtain the soul of the divine sword, but we'll also be able to watch the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect fight each other. At that time, we can take the opportunity to rescue the Demon King and massacre the ancient star realm. When the sun was high in the sky, Chu Tiansheng and the others returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Several elders sent Ji Tianqing and Yen to the spiritual medicine hall and were busy treating their injuries. Yun Yao did not leave. She stayed by Ji Tianqing's side and assisted the spiritual medicine elder in treating his injuries. Chu Tiansheng also temporarily put aside the matters of the sect and stayed by Ji Tianqing's side. The elixir elder arranged for Ji Tianqing to be placed in a secret room for healing and let him lie on a cold jade bed. After a while, he found out about Ji Tianqing's injuries. Chu Tianqing quickly asked, "Medicine elder, how are Tianqing's injuries?" The medicine elder frowned and said in a serious tone, "Tianqing's injuries are too serious. It's already a miracle that he didn't die on the spot. His internal organs are all damaged. His heart was almost shattered, and all the meridians in his body were broken. It's actually so serious." Chu Tianqing's expression immediately changed, and he narrowed his eyes. Yun Yao also revealed a face full of shock and worry, and her mood became even heavier. The spiritual medicine elder quickly comforted Chu Tiansheng and comforted him, "Sect master, don't worry. Although Tianqing's injuries are serious, this old man will do his best and be able to treat his injuries within half a year." Tianqing's cultivation method is very special. It has already tempered his internal organs and meridians to be very tough, far surpassing cultivators of the same level. It's also because of this that he can still save his life. If it were anyone else, they would have died on the spot. Chu Tianqing frowned and ordered in a serious tone, "Medicine elder, no matter how great the price is, you must treat Tianqing with all your might. Let him wake up as soon as possible and recover from his injuries." "Yes." The medicine elder nodded and began to prepare the healing pills, preparing to treat Ji Tianqing's injuries. Chu Tianqing glanced at Yun Yao and saw that she looked tired and her spirit was a little dispirited. He said in a gentle tone, "Yun Yao, you haven't rested for 2 days. So many things have happened during this period. You must be mentally and physically exhausted. Go back and rest." Yun Yao shook her head. Her eyes were still fixed on Ji Tianqing, who was unconscious. She said in a firm tone, "Master, I don't want to rest. I want to see Junior Tianqing." Chu Tianqing saw that her attitude was firm, so he stopped persuading her. He sighed silently in his heart. Chapter 355. 10 days passed by very quickly. In these 10 days, the spiritual medicine elder had tried all sorts of methods to heal Ji Tianqing's injuries as soon as possible. He had given Ji Tianqing many top-notch spiritual pills and had to use his qi to heal him every day. Yun Yao had also stayed by Ji Tianqing's side and hadn't slept for 10 consecutive days. Even if she was the #1 genius of the Tianjin region and a Yuan Dan stage expert, her body and mind couldn't take it for 12 consecutive days without rest. She sat beside the ice jade bed and laid on the table. She supported her face with her hands and stared at the sleeping Ji Tianqing. Her beautiful face was filled with fatigue, and her clear eyes were also covered with a thick layer of exhaustion. Fortunately, after 10 days and 10 nights of recuperation, Ji Tianqing finally woke up from his coma. He only felt that his head was dizzy and his consciousness was still a little blurry. He slowly opened his eyes. When his eyes could clearly see the things in front of him, he saw a beautiful woman in white sitting at the stone table beside the bed. Although her beautiful brows were slightly furrowed, her beautiful face was filled with fatigue, and her clear eyes were filled with fatigue, making her look a lot dimmer. But in Ji Tianqing's eyes, in his heart, she was still so beautiful. Moreover, at this moment, she wasn't as cold and arrogant as before. Instead, she had a weak feeling that made people feel pity for her. Even if she was an otherworldly fairy, she also had a weak side and a day when she was exhausted. Ji Tianqing stared at her and moved his lips. His voice was weak as he said, "I once read a sentence in a book. When you wake up, the first person you see is also the person you want to see in your dreams. Then she must be the person who cares about you the most." Seeing Yun Yao by the bed with a weak light and a tired face, he didn't know why, But this sentence appeared in his mind, and he blurted it out. Yun Yao, who was in a daze, was suddenly awakened by his voice and immediately came back to her senses. She was stunned for a moment. She looked at Ji Tianxing and met his deep eyes. She saw a complicated and indescribable gentleness in his eyes. Tianxing, you're finally awake. That's great. Yun Yao was a little excited, and a gratified smile appeared on her pretty face. She quickly reached out her slender hand and held Ji Tianxing's wrist to check his pulse and body condition. After a while, seeing that his pulse was stable and his injuries had mostly recovered, she let out a sigh of relief. Ji Tianxing lay quietly and looked at her with a smile on his face. Senior sister, thank you for taking care of me for so long. Oh right, how many days have I been unconscious? Yun Yao said gently, you have been unconscious for 10 days and 10 nights. Junior brother Tianxing, please wait for a moment. I'll go get the medicine elder to come over and check your injuries. Ji Tianxing shook his head gently. Senior sister, there's no need. I can feel that my injuries are no longer serious. Next, I just need to rest for a few days and I'll be able to recover. That's good. Yun Yao nodded slightly. The secret room quieted down. Neither of them spoke, and the atmosphere seemed to be a little charming and awkward. Yun Yao's expression was normal, as if she didn't hear the first sentence Ji Tianxing said when he woke up. But Ji Tianxing was sure that she definitely heard that sentence. This was because her sparkling and translucent earlobes had turned a little red again. After a moment of silence, Ji Tianxing said, Senior sister, you must be tired after taking care of me for so long. Go back and rest. Yun Yao's expression was a little hesitant. But if I leave, who will take care of you? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Don't worry, my injuries have stabilized. Nothing will happen. Moreover, if something really happens, the disciples of the Spirit Medicine Hall will come and take care of me. Senior sister, after the previous incident, the relationship between our sect and the Tianjin sect has deteriorated. Our sect may have many trivial matters to attend to in the near future. You should go and help Master. After listening to his words of persuasion, Yun Yao said goodbye and left. Before leaving, she didn't forget to remind him to focus on healing his injuries. After Yun Yao left, Ji Tianxing was the only one left in the secret room. Enduring the pain from his internal injuries, he supported himself with both hands on the frost jade bed and slowly sat up. He used his spiritual sense to check his injuries. After seeing the condition of his internal organs and sword vein, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise. The burial of heaven helped me block 70% of the power from the palm of the Tianjin sect's sect master, but I still suffered 30% of the power. My internal organs were injured, and several of my sword veins were broken. I didn't expect the sword vein to have such a strong self-healing ability. It healed in just 10 days. Ji Tianxing knew very well that although the spiritual elixir elder's treatment had helped him, it was more due to the sword vein's powerful recovery ability. If it were an ordinary martial artist, even with the spirit medicine elder's painstaking treatment, it would take at least a month for them to recover. Ji Tianxing carefully checked the 9 sword veins in his body and found an even more shocking result. The 8 aperture points on the 8th sword vein had all been refined. His strength had also broken through the 8th tier of the profound comprehension realm and silently reached the 9th tier of the profound comprehension realm. Not only that, but 3 of the apertures on the 9th sword vein had also been refined. This must be because I desperately unleashed my potential and used my strongest true origin when I was hit by Gao Yi's palm. I was severely injured by Gao Yi's palm, but I also took the opportunity to break through and greatly increase my strength. This should be considered a blessing in disguise, right? Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's heart was slightly comforted, and his eyes revealed a trace of a smile. Subsequently, he felt an incomparably majestic and terrifying medicinal power accumulating in his body. This was the medicinal power of the elixirs he had taken in the past 10 days that had not been completely refined. If he did not refine it, the medicinal power would accumulate in his body and slowly dissipate with the passage of time. That would be too wasteful. Therefore, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the frost jade bed and tried to refine the medicinal power to heal his injuries. His sword vein had just recovered, and his injuries were still very serious. Logically speaking, he should not be cultivating and could only lie down to recuperate. However, he endured his injuries and the severe pain in his body, and with his tenacious will, he gritted his teeth and persevered. As time passed, his injuries began to heal quickly, and the pain in his body gradually lessened. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 5 days passed quickly. In these 5 days, Yun Yao, the spirit medicine elder, Chu Tiansheng, and Yen had all come to visit him in the secret room. Everyone saw that he was cultivating, so they did not wake him up and disturb him. 5 days later, when Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation, he had finally refined more than half of the medicinal power that had accumulated in his body. His injuries had recovered by 70%, and he could already move freely. Chapter 356. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's strength had reached the limit of the mystic comprehending stage. He only needed to advance one more step, and he would be able to break through the shackles and reach the origin core stage. But unfortunately, he was unable to cultivate the 5th level of the Sword Heart Tao after completing the 4th level cultivation method. The 5th level of the Sword Heart Tao required him to combine the sword embryo, 9 sword veins, and 72 apertures to condense the mysterious and vast sword palace within his body. The so-called sword palace used the 9 sword veins to form the 9 palace formation, and used the sword embryo and 72 apertures as the foundation to increase the power and changes of the sword palace. Once the sword palace was successfully condensed, it would cause the power of true origin to increase by 9 times and possess a myriad of changes and miraculous effects. All in all, the sword palace was a miraculous secret technique that changed the internal structure of the human body and ingeniously combined the human body with the stars. But unfortunately, the cultivation method of the 5th level of the Sword Palace was obviously not something that ordinary people could cultivate. Ji Tianqing consecutively tried a few tens of times, but he failed every time as expected. In the end, he had no choice but to give up and continue to circulate his cultivation method to heal his injuries. The facts proved that what the Burial of Heaven said at that time was completely correct. He only had a mortal body, and being able to cultivate the 4th level of the Sword Heart Tao had already reached the limit. If he was unable to fuse with the Kenshin bloodline, he would be unable to cultivate the 5th level of the Sword Heart Tao in this lifetime. His strength could only stop at the perfection of the mystic comprehending stage, and he would never be able to reach the origin core stage. Ji Tianqing had already secretly decided to go into closed-door cultivation to heal his injuries for a few more days. After his injuries were healed and his strength recovered to its peak state, he would go to the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb to try to crack the Heaven Origin formation and search for the Heavenly Star Pearl. After all, after he reached the perfection of the mystic comprehending stage, the power of his true origin and true combat strength were comparable to an ordinary second-level origin core stage expert. Perhaps he had a trace of hope to crack the Heaven Origin formation of the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb. In the north of the Heavenly Stellar region, there was a vast and prosperous area about a few 100 million miles away. This area was the center of the profound sky continent. It was the most bustling and prosperous place, and it was also the sacred land of martial arts where dragon veins gathered and experts were as numerous as the clouds. The experts of the various clans in the profound sky continent called this area was called the Central State. In the southern area of the Central Plains, there was a continuous, lofty, and magnificent mountain range, and it was called the Skypierce Mountain Range. In the center of the sky-connecting mountain range, there was a 10,000-meter-tall towering peak shrouded in clouds and mist on top of the Dragon Vein treasure land. This giant peak was called Heaven-Reaching Peak, and it was one of the tallest and most sacred mountains in the world. At the foot of Heaven-Reaching Peak, there was a wide and enormous divine path that extended along the steep mountain to the summit. However, from halfway up the mountain, the Heaven-Reaching Peak was covered by a thick fog. Half of Heaven-Reaching Peak stood in the sea of clouds, like a celestial mountain in the sky. A few magnificent and majestic palaces stood at the peak of the mountain, looking like the palaces of the gods. This was the sacred land of the human race, the most sacred and majestic human imperial court on the continent. There were 3 palaces, 9 halls, and 18 courtyards in the imperial court. Every palace and mansion was built to be huge and spacious, revealing a majestic and domineering aura that could shock the heavens and the earth and suppress the 4 seas. The location of these palaces and mansions implied the mathematical changes of the heavens and earth, the sun, moon, and stars, and the profound principles. Anyone who came before the imperial court would feel a divinity like the descent of the gods, a majesty like the manifestation of heaven's will. They would kowtow and worship with reverence and devotion. The entire imperial court seemed to have gathered the faith of billions of people, the spiritual chi of billions of mountains and rivers. Standing in the sea of clouds, it was as dazzling as the sun. Currently, inside the palace of heaven and earth inside the imperial court, there was a bright, spacious, and elegant study room. A middle-aged man dressed in a golden dragon robe and wearing a purple gold dragon jade crown was sitting before a spacious table. He was focused on reading the memorials and letters. This person had a tall and sturdy figure with a dignified appearance. Between his brows, there was a sense of righteousness. Besides the domineering aura that looked down on the common people, there was a vast and majestic aura that merged with the heavens and earth. He only sat upright before the table, but he was like a god looking down on the common people of the world. On the vermilion table, there were a few thick stacks of ancient books, memorials, and letters. These were all documents from the various regions of the southern continent. There was also a simple bronze incense burner on the table. Purple wood jade sandalwood burned in the burner, emitting a faint green smoke, causing the study room to be filled with a fresh and elegant sandalwood scent. This rare purple wood jade sandalwood had the miraculous effect of refreshing the mind and cleansing the soul. At this time, the man in the golden robe picked up a letter. Seeing the words Tianqian region at the bottom right of the letter, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. After removing the seal, he took out a piece of golden paper and carefully read the contents. Greetings, Your Majesty. I am now the leader of the Tianjian sect in the Tianqian region. I live in the ancient star realm and protect the common people. However, the leader of the Tianqian region, the Sky Pillar sect, has dominated the ancient star realm for thousands of years. They have done whatever they want, oppressing the common people. I have encountered a great disaster recently. May I be so bold as to report the grievances to Your Majesty and tell you the reason. Without a doubt, the man in the golden robe was the leader of the imperial court, the leader and guardian of the human race on the continent, Emperor Long Xuanquan. After reading the contents of the letter, he put it on the table and couldn't help but frown. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, "Commander Yu, send a message to the imperial tutor. I have something important to discuss with him in the study room." Outside the door of the study room, there was a 2-meter-tall burly man in golden armor. He immediately bowed and accepted the order, then quickly left. Not long after, Commander Yu brought a white-haired old man in a purple robe with a golden horsetail whisked to the door of the study room. This white-haired old man was thin and looked old, but he had white hair and a youthful complexion. He was hale and hearty. His aura was ethereal and mysterious. His body was as vast as the stars and as leisurely as the floating clouds. He was a true master. "Your Majesty, the imperial tutor is here." Commander Yu bowed and reported. The imperial preceptor held the horsetail whisk and stepped into the study. He bowed slightly to the emperor and said with an indifferent expression, "Greetings, Your Majesty. May I know what Your Majesty has summoned me here for?" The emperor didn't say much and handed the letter to the imperial tutor. After the imperial tutor finished reading, he said in a serious tone, "Imperial tutor, there are changes in the Tianqian region. The Tianjian sect and the Sky Pillar sect are in conflict. A war is imminent. I think there is something fishy about this matter. What do you think, imperial tutor?" The imperial tutor put down the letter and stroked his long white beard. His ruddy face revealed an unfathomable smile. "Your Majesty, for the past 10 years, I have been studying the stars on the star-plucking platform and comprehending the mysteries of the heavens. I have long discovered that the demonic chi in the Tianqian region is surging. There must be remnants of the demonic clan causing chaos. It will not be peaceful." Chapter 357. Hearing the imperial tutor's words, the emperor nodded slightly in agreement. "I vaguely remember that 1,000 years ago, the demon emperor caused chaos in the Tianqian region and wantonly slaughtered our people. At that time, Kenshin helped the imperial court to kill the demon emperor and seemed to have suppressed the demon emperor in the Tianqian region. When the words sword god were mentioned, a wisp of bright light flashed within the muddy eyes of the imperial preceptor, and dense recollection gushed out from his eyes. He was a little absent-minded. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said, "Yes, 1,000 years have passed in the blink of an eye. After Kenshin suppressed the demon emperor, A junior in the Tianjin region received a few words of advice from Kenshin and established a sect on the formation that sealed the demon emperor. It is the current Sky Pillar sect. The emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, "The demon qi in the Tianjin region is surging. The Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect are about to go to war. I'm afraid this matter will involve the demon emperor's seal. It seems that I have to send someone to the Tianjin region to stabilize the situation. Otherwise, when the demon emperor is born, it will bring a bloody storm and monstrous slaughter to our people." The imperial tutor held the horsetail whisk and bowed with a solemn expression. He said in a solemn tone, "The emperor is right. This old man agrees." The emperor nodded and had a thoughtful expression. He asked, "Then in the imperial tutor's opinion, which divine general should I send?" The imperial tutor weighed the pros and cons and shook his head. "Emperor, it's not appropriate to send the 4 divine generals. The 4 divine generals have their own duties. They have to guard the central state, resist the armies of the east, west, and north, and protect the safety of the imperial court. They bear a great responsibility. In this old man's opinion, there is one person who is very suitable to go to the Tianjin region to settle this matter." The emperor raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Oh? I'd like to hear the details." The imperial tutor stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Emperor, Yun Shao." The emperor frowned. After pondering for a moment, he nodded slightly to express his agreement. Yun Shao is already over 20 years old. Although he has reached the Sky Origin realm, he has only trained in the central state and has not gone to the 9 southern regions. I have long thought to find a suitable opportunity to send him to the south to patrol our territory. It can not only train him, but also increase his experience. The chaos in the Tianjin region is a suitable opportunity. The imperial preceptor smiled and added, "Moreover, one of the 3 heavenly concubine candidates is from the Sky Pillar sect in the heavenly stellar region. The emperor can use this opportunity to send the emperor to the Tianjin region and let him see the heavenly consort candidate personally. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, the position of heavenly consort must be personally chosen by the emperor." The emperor lord nodded and said, "That's good. Then this emperor will send Cloud Sky to the heavenly stellar region." After saying that, he ordered Commander Yu at the door, "Commander Yu, send a message to Yu Tianzi. Tell him to come to the study immediately." Commander Yu bowed and accepted the order. He quickly turned and left to pass down the order. At the border between the Tianjin region and the Yong'an region, there was a boundless mountain range. This mountain range was extremely vast. There were at least 100,000 mountain peaks that rose and fell continuously. Therefore, this area was called the 100,000 Mountains. The 100,000 mountains were desolate and uninhabited. Although there were many heavenly materials and earthly treasures and resources, they were occupied by countless demons and devils. This area was very dangerous, and it was located at the border of the 2 regions. Therefore, it became a forbidden area for humans. No one dared to set foot in it. In the deepest part of the 100,000 mountains, there was an area covered by black clouds. In this area, there were more than a dozen towering mountains. It was also a place where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth gathered. On the surface, this area was dead silent. The sky, the earth, and the mountains were filled with a gloomy fog. In fact, there were countless caves and tunnels inside the mountains and underground. They had long been built into a huge underground city. This gloomy underground city was the Blood Demon City, where the Blood Demon tribe was located. In the palace in the depths of the Blood Demon City, a tall and graceful figure was walking on the main road of the palace. She was wearing a black robe with a cloak and a veil. Only a pair of dark red eyes could be seen. On both sides of the wide black stone road, there was a demon warrior in black armor every 100 steps. They were standing solemnly with halberds in their hands. They were like stone statues. Seeing the black-robed woman walk by, the black-armored guards knelt down on one knee. They clenched their left fists and beat their chests. They saluted and said, "Princess." Without a doubt, this black-robed woman was the Blood Moon Princess. She ignored the black-armored guards on both sides of the road and walked straight to the end of the road. Then, she stepped into a dark and cold palace. The palace was dark and gloomy. The air was filled with a cold demonic aura and a strong smell of blood. The seemingly spacious and lofty palace was like the netherworld. It was dead silent and filled with the smell of death. However, the Blood Moon Princess did not feel uncomfortable in this palace. Instead, she felt warm and intimate, as if she had returned to her hometown and entered her mother's embrace. She walked into the depths of the palace and stood outside a dark cloud. Then she bowed respectfully. "Greetings, father." The black cloud was at least 100 meters in radius. It occupied a spacious hall and was constantly churning and surging. Along with the surging of the dark cloud, a rhythmic snoring sound could be heard. Then gusts of cold wind gushed out. Hearing the voice of the Blood Moon Princess, the snoring sound in the dark cloud stopped abruptly. The dark palace quieted down. The dark cloud surged a few times. Suddenly, 2 scarlet-red lights lit up. The 2 scarlet-red lights were 3 meters in radius. They were actually a pair of huge eyes. The scarlet-red eyes and dark green pupils revealed a cold and indifferent aura that despised life. The huge bloody eyes looked at the Blood Moon Princess. A dull voice came from the dark cloud. "Blood Moon, my daughter, why did you come back at this time? Could it be that you and the High Priest failed and were driven out of the Star Ancient Realm by the Sky Pillar sect?" The Blood Moon Princess immediately explained, "Father, that is not the case. I came back this time to tell you a piece of good news. Our plan is about to succeed. The Tianjin sect was used by us and formed a blood feud with the Sky Pillar sect. Soon we will go to war. The High Priest hopes that Father can personally go to the Star Ancient Realm to take charge of the situation and welcome the return of the Demon Emperor." Hearing this, the huge dark cloud immediately collapsed and dissipated. A huge black beast that was 100 meters in length immediately appeared in the palace and was exposed in front of the Blood Moon Princess. This ferocious beast was as big as a hill. Its appearance was as thick and sturdy as a black bear. However, there were several rows of sharp spikes on its back. It also had 4 broad black wings. On its bloated belly, there were 8 thick legs and a bloody mouth full of sharp teeth. What a ferocious and terrifying monster. Chapter 358. As far back as the Blood Moon Infanta could remember, her father, the Blood Demon King, had an ugly and ferocious appearance. Moreover, she knew that when she reached the Sky Origin Realm and became a Demon King, her appearance wouldn't be much better than her father's. This was the fate of the Demon Clan. As they became stronger, their bodies would become uglier and more ferocious. The Blood Moon Infanta was already used to it, so when she saw her father's mountain-like body, she wasn't surprised or disgusted. Gurgle, gurgle, the Blood Demon King's huge and ugly body started to shrink rapidly, and black mist gushed out of it. In the blink of an eye, his body disappeared, and he became a 3-meter-tall giant with dark purple skin. The giant had a pair of beast-like feet, long red hair, and a body covered with thick purple hair. He looked like a dark purple gorilla. He wore a bone-tooth necklace around his neck and a black python skin apron around his waist. He sat on a throne made of skulls, and his body emitted a violent and bloodthirsty aura. He used a secret technique to hide his body and condensed it into a Demon Clan body. Although his body still looked barbaric and ugly, it still looked like a normal Demon Clan body. It wasn't as ferocious and terrifying as his original body. "Blood Moon, the news you brought back made your father very pleased. In the past few years, you helped the High Priest move in the Ancient Realm. You really got a lot of training and growth." The Blood Demon King's tone was filled with gratification and pride, and he was very satisfied with the Blood Moon Infanta's performance. The Blood Moon Infanta bowed and said, "Father, apart from this, I have an even more surprising news to tell you." "What news?" The Blood Demon King raised his eyebrows, and his scarlet eyes were filled with expectation. The Blood Moon Infanta smiled and said, "The Sky Pillar Sect's master, Chu Tianqing, accepted a new personal disciple, and his name is Ji Tianqing. This kid is only 17 years old, but he grew rapidly in just a few months. He also destroyed our plans and killed many of our warriors. The High Priest unexpectedly found that this kid's body contained the soul of the godly sword." Hearing this news, the Blood Demon King's eyes turned red, and they flickered with a bloody light. "Divine Sword Soul? Could it be the soul of Kenshin's sword?" The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and said, "Yes." "Ha ha ha." The Blood Demon King raised his head and laughed. His voice was as deep as a lion's roar. "That's great. This is an unexpected surprise, a huge surprise." After laughing for a while, the Blood Demon King finally calmed down. He clenched his fists and said in a low and solemn voice, "Very good. This king has worked hard for 100 years and finally found a clue to Kenshin. This king has been asleep for too long. It's time for me to reappear in this world and start a massacre. This time, I will personally lead the elite warriors to the ancient star realm to realize the great plan of our clan's revival. As long as I capture that human brat and obtain the soul of the divine sword, I will be able to learn all of Kenshin's secrets and find Kenshin's heavenly star bead. After His Majesty the Demon Emperor is born, this king will massacre the heavenly stellar region. The Blood Demon King laughed wildly, his tone full of anticipation and bloodthirst. Blood Moon Infanta also grinned and sneered silently. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing had been recuperating in the secret chamber for 5 days and 5 nights. His injuries were finally healed, and his strength had also returned to its peak state. On the morning of the 6th day, he finally ended his cultivation. After opening his eyes, Ji Tianqing sat on the icy jade bed and pondered silently. Now that my injuries have healed and my strength has fully recovered, I have to go to the Dragon Mountain tomb and try to break the Tianyuan array. The situation in the ancient star realm is already so tense. The Tianjian sect has a grudge with our sect, and they will definitely come back to take revenge. The demon race is also so rampant. They must be trying to rescue the peerless demon that our sect is suppressing. I have to get the heavenly star bead as soon as possible and merge with the Kenshin bloodline. Only then can I have the ability to protect myself in such a chaotic situation. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing left the secret chamber and bid farewell to the Elixir Elder. Seeing his injuries recover so quickly, the Elixir Elder was quite shocked and felt that it was unbelievable. The Elixir Elder originally thought that with his meticulous treatment, Ji Tianqing's injuries would heal in a month, and his strength would recover in 3 months. However, he didn't expect Ji Tianqing to heal his injuries in only 20 days, and his strength had also fully recovered. While the Elixir Elder was surprised, he also gave Ji Tianqing a bottle of top-grade black-level elixirs to help him stabilize his martial arts foundation and continue to heal his injuries. After leaving the Elixir Hall, Ji Tianqing rushed to the sky-raising palace on the Red Cloud Peak to meet his master, Chu Tianqing. Chu Tianqing had given a strict order that the Dragon Mountain Tomb's array was very profound and dangerous, and the sect's elders and deacons were not allowed to try to break it without permission. Therefore, Ji Tianqing had to get Chu Tianqing's approval if he wanted to try to break the ancient tomb's array. He waited for a moment in the sky-raising palace, and Chu Tianqing quickly entered the main hall and came to him. Chu Tianqing looked at him a few times, and his face was full of surprise. He said in shock, "Tianqing, you've only been recuperating for 20 days, and your injuries are already healed?" Ji Tianqing bowed and said, "Yes, master." "Well, very good." Chu Tianqing nodded with a gratified face and said with a smile, "Since your injuries have been healed, master is relieved. Tell me, why did you come to see master today?" Ji Tianqing's face was solemn, and he replied in a solemn tone, "Master, the Tianjian sect is now being used by the demon race, and their ambitions are clear as day. Although our sect is strong, it is difficult to guard against their schemes, and we must find ways to strengthen our defenses. Since discovering the Dragon Mountain tomb, Disciple has been studying the Tianyuan array with great concentration. I have consulted the Grand Elder many times and read all kinds of ancient books and information. After 2 months of hard work, Disciple has grasped the method to break the Tianyuan array. So, Disciple wants to try his best to see if I can break the Tianyuan array." Chu Tianqing frowned, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. "Tianqing, are you serious? That's the Tianyuan array, and even master is helpless. How can you possibly find a way to break it?" Ji Tianqing said with a serious expression, "Master, Disciple has another fortuitous encounter that allowed me to comprehend the method to break the Tianyuan array. Please allow Disciple to try to break the Tianyuan array." This matter was too shocking, and Chu Tianqing was slightly hesitant. He said in disbelief, "Tianqing, if you want to break the Tianyuan array, you must have the strength of the Tianyuan stage. At the very least, you must be an Origin Core stage powerhouse to have the qualifications to try to break the Tianyuan array. And you," Ji Tianqing said in a firm tone, "Disciple has reached the perfection of the Mystic Comprehension stage, and my strength is comparable to a second-level Origin Core stage powerhouse." Chu Tianqing hesitated and frowned for a long time before he nodded and agreed to this matter. "All right, master will allow you to try once, but to be on the safe side and to avoid any accidents, Master will send Yun Yao to go with you. Brothers, give me a few recommendation votes. Chapter 359. After receiving Chu Tianqing's order, Ji Tianqing took his leave. He immediately rushed to the White Cloud Hall to explain this matter to Yun Yao. Yun Yao was very shocked when she learned that he was going to crack the Dragon Mountain Ancient Tombs array. She found it unbelievable. However, when she saw Ji Tianqing's confident look, she had confidence and expectations in him. The two of them did not waste any time. They left the White Cloud Hall on their spirit cranes and rushed to Dragon Mountain. After arriving at Dragon Mountain, the two of them entered the mine halfway up the mountain. They followed the complicated mine tunnel and rushed to the depths of the underground. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the dilapidated ancient square and stopped outside the Tianyuan array. The five-colored light shield was still shining with a dazzling brilliance and exuding a majestic aura. Outer Sect Elder Chu Huaishan and several deacons were guarding the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb outside the Tianyuan array as usual. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrive, Chu Huaishan quickly walked to them and greeted them. Yun Yao, Tianqing, why are the two of you here? Is there an order from the sect leader? Greetings, Elder Chu. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao bowed to Chu Huaishan. Ji Tianqing went straight to the point and said, Elder Chu, we are here to try to crack the ancient tomb's protective array. Chu Huaishan was stunned for a moment. His face was full of shock and disbelief. Tianqing, this Tianyuan array is extremely exquisite and unfathomable. He stopped halfway because he knew that Ji Tianqing must be aware of this as well. There was no need for him to say more. Therefore, he asked directly, Tianqing, does the sect leader know about this? Ji Tianqing nodded. I have already asked the sect leader. Chu Huaishan did not say anything else after receiving an affirmative answer. Ji Tianqing continued, Elder Chu, eldest senior sister, and I will try to crack the array. We will have to trouble Elder Chu and the deacons to protect us. No problem. Chu Huaishan nodded without hesitation. Then, Chu Huaishan turned and left the ruined square to explain the situation to the deacons. When everyone learned that Ji Tianqing was going to attempt to break the formation, they were both shocked and delighted. Their hearts were filled with anticipation. Soon, the deacons spread out and stood guard around the Tianyuan Grand Formation. Chu Huaishan stayed by Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's side to protect them. If there was a sudden emergency, he would come to their rescue. Ji Tianqing paced around the Tianyuan Grand Array. His sharp eyes observed the array and prepared to break it. Although he was already very familiar with this great formation, he had observed it many times before. But just in case, he had to carefully observe and study it again. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing walked around the Tianyuan Grand Array and observed the entire array clearly. Then, he began to break the array. This Tianyuan Grand Array uses a total of 5 Tianyuan Grand Array formations. From the derivation of the 5 elements, to the stabilization of the 6 directions, to the 7 stars of the Heavenly Dipper 7 stars, to the 8 extreme dragon lock, and to the 9 cauldrons of heaven and earth. The complexity increases with each step. I'll start with the derivation of the 5 elements. He analyzed it in his mind for a moment. Then he used his array formation skills. He continuously waved his palms and sent rays of true essence into the 5-colored light shield. He began to break the array. Legend has it that after heaven and earth were born, the power of the 5 elements evolved and formed all living things in the world. The derivation of the 5 elements, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. It is an endless cycle. If a Tianyuan elite has already mastered the power of the 5 elements, he can use the power of the 5 elements to break the array and gradually break the derivation of the 5 elements. Unfortunately, I only mastered the power of metal and fire. I can only use fire to restrain metal, and then use metal to restrain wood. Ji Tianqing's clear and complete thoughts emerged in his mind. He used the power of the red flame primordial fire to break the array and restrain the power of metal in the derivation of the 5 elements. His expression was calm as he focused on the Tianyuan Grand Array. He waved his palms and made a special gesture to break the array. His expression was calm and steady. He seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. He did not hesitate at all. He had the demeanor of an array formation master. Yun Yao stood silently beside him. She stared at him. She felt that there was an invisible aura coming from him. Junior brother Tianqing is growing very quickly. He is becoming more and more like a powerful elite. she thought to herself. A hint of admiration flashed across her clear eyes. As time passed, Ji Tianqing waved his palms faster and faster. The power of the red flame primordial fire also became more and more violent. After an hour, he finally managed to restrain the power of metal. This is great. The array formation skills that Dragon Sun Ba Xia taught me can indeed break the Tianyuan Grand Array. Although I am still far from breaking the derivation of the 5 elements, this is the first step to success. Reality proved that his array formation skills could break the Tianyuan Grand Array. This boosted his confidence. He was filled with excitement and anticipation. He did not hesitate to channel his metal elemental true essence into the array. He used his array formation skills to restrain the wood elemental energy. Soon, another hour had passed. The wood elemental energy in the array was also temporarily restrained. After this, Ji Tianqing still had to use water to restrain fire, wood to restrain earth, and earth to restrain water. He had not mastered the power of these 3 elements, but he had already prepared the corresponding materials to break the array. He took out 2 ice blue gemstones from his spatial ring and held them in his palms. These 2 gemstones were water spirit stones. They contained majestic and pure water elemental energy. Ji Tianqing channeled the elemental energy in the water spirit stones. He waved his palms and released an ice blue glow. It was indeed able to restrain the fire elemental energy in the array. Time passed silently. Yun Yao and Chu Huaishan watched Ji Tianqing break the array. The surprise in their eyes became more and more intense. Both of them could not believe that Ji Tianqing, who was only at the mystic comprehending realm, had such profound array formation skills. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing finally completed the first step of breaking the 5 elements derivation array. He had achieved the effect of restraining the 5 elements. Next, he still had to complete the effect of the mutual generation of the 5 elements. He channeled his true essence again. He waved his palms and released in true essence glow. He used fire to produce earth, metal to produce water. Then, he used the water spirit stones, earth spirit stones, and wood spirit stones to complete the step of mutual generation of the 5 elements. In this way, the 5 elements derivation array was completely under his control. The generation and restraint of the 5 elements were also under his control. Ji Tianqing spent another 4 hours manipulating the generation and restraint of the 5 elements derivation array. He finally reached the 3rd step of breaking the array, unifying it into one. Yun Yao and Chu Huaishan were both shocked when Yi Futian used his matrix breaking technique to gradually undo the 5 elements matrix and cause the power of the 5 elements to gradually dissipate. He actually succeeded. Ji Tianqing had actually broken the 5 elements derivation array and temporarily closed the array. This 5 elements derivation array was only a small part of the Tianyuan array. Ji Tianqing still needed to break 4 more arrays before he could truly break the Tianyuan array. Chapter 360. With Ji Tianqing's strength and means, he could not completely break the 5 elements derivation formation. He could only temporarily shut down the formation, which could be maintained for about 7 days. After 7 days, the 5 elements derivation formation would naturally resume operation. However, Yun Yao, Chu Huaishan, and the other deacons were shocked and incredulous that he could do this. While everyone was still in awe, Ji Tianqing had already stopped. He quickly sat on the ground and held a spirit stone in his hand to restore his true core strength. In the past 10 hours, he had continuously used his true core strength to break the formation. Not only had he consumed a lot of true core strength, but he was also very tired. Seeing this, Yun Yao immediately sat down in front of him and stretched out her hands to support his palms, transferring her true core strength to him. Originally, Ji Tianqing needed to cultivate for 6 to 8 hours and consume a spirit stone to restore his true core strength. However, with Yun Yao's help, his true core strength was restored after 4 hours. After he finished cultivating, Ji Tianqing nodded to Yun Yao and cast a grateful look at her. He continued to break the formation and began to break the second formation of the Tianyuan formation, the Big Dipper 7 Stars formation. Seeing this, Chu Huaishan suddenly frowned in confusion and asked subconsciously, "Tianqing, why did you break the Big Dipper 7 Stars formation first? Shouldn't you break the 6 Directions Stabilization formation next?" Not only Chu Huaishan, but the other deacons around the formation were also puzzled. Ji Tianqing quickly explained to Chu Huaishan, "Elder Chu, This Tianyuan formation uses the 5 elements formation very cleverly. The order of breaking the formation is also hidden in the heavenly mystery. If you break the 6 direction stabilization formation in order from easy to difficult, you will definitely detonate the formation and cause the ancient tomb and the entire Dragon Mountain to be destroyed. Chu Huaishan suddenly understood and nodded in agreement. I see. Previously, I and the other elders had studied it for half a month. Although we had figured out several methods of setting up the array, we were unable to deduce the order of breaking the array. That was why we didn't dare to act rashly. Back in the ancient Star Palace, Boss Ya had reminded Ji Tianqing that the order of deciphering the Tianyuan Grand Formation was of utmost importance when he taught Ji Tianqing about the formation. Once there was a mistake in the order of breaking the formation, it would definitely lead to the most serious consequences. The formation would immediately self-destruct. Ji Tianqing kept this in mind and focused on studying, deducing, and rehearsing hundreds of times before he was certain that the order of breaking the formation would be accurate. The index and middle fingers of both of his hands joined together to form sword fingers, forming hand seals, constantly drawing arcs in the air, forming mysterious hand seals, shooting out beams of true essence brilliance. Streaks of true essence light entered the array and immediately produced a huge reaction, causing earth-shattering changes. The 5-colored light barrier within 1,000 meters immediately lit up with a soaring brilliance, forming 5-colored clouds within a radius of 10 miles. The entire Tianyuan Grand Formation also began to operate rapidly. Dense silver light spots appeared on the 5-colored light barrier. There were as many as 90,000 of them, like a vast sea of stars. Those silver light spots bloomed with dazzling starlight, reflecting on the 5-colored clouds above the formation. Suddenly, a dazzling, vast, and mysterious starry sky map appeared before everyone's eyes. Everyone looked up at the clouds and starry sky map in the sky, watching the 90,000 stars constantly moving, displaying the scene of stars changing positions. They were all dumbfounded, especially the deacons, who had been obsessed with array Dao for half their lives, but had never touched the mysteries of the Tianyuan Grand Formation Dao. At this moment, they were trembling with excitement when they saw the mysteries of the Tianyuan 7 stars array and the scene of stars changing positions. This is incredible. To be able to see such a magnificent array, I can die without regrets. This is definitely a miracle. Such an extraordinary array is not something that can be set up by humans. It's like a miracle. Ji Tianqing is only in the mystic comprehending realm, but his array Dao attainments are far beyond all of us. This really makes us feel ashamed. Sigh. Compared to a 17-year-old youth like him, our 100 years of life have all been wasted. It's a great fortune for our sect to have Ji Tianqing. The deacons were filled with excitement and emotion. They looked at the starry sky map with infatuation, their excitement overflowing with words. Previously, when everyone heard that Ji Tianqing was going to try to break the array, they were worried and apprehensive, fearing that he would make a mistake. After all, sect leader Chu Tiansheng had solemnly said that the Tianyuan Grand Formation was incomparably profound. If there was any mistake in breaking the array rashly, it would cause irreversible consequences. The entire array and ancient tomb would self-destruct. Now, everyone had seen Ji Tianqing break the array with their own eyes. Looking at the magnificent starry sky map, all their worries and apprehensions dissipated and were replaced by shock and amazement. Even Yun Yao was shocked by the mysteriousness and vastness of the starry sky map. She stood beside Ji Tianqing and watched as he focused on breaking the formation. She saw that he was brimming with confidence and the aura of someone who could pass judgment on everything. She felt that he was even more precious and worthy of admiration. Compared to those flamboyant and arrogant young talents, Tianqing's calm, wise, confident, and reserved temperament is more admirable. If others could see him now, I wonder how many girls would fall in love with him and be charmed by him. As this thought flashed through Yun Yao's mind, the corners of her mouth curled up into a beautiful smile. Unknowingly, another 8 hours had passed. The colorful clouds that covered the sky and the vast starry sky map formed by 90,000 stars finally dissipated gradually. Ji Tianqing continuously shot out tens of thousands of true essence rays to break the array. He operated the Big Dipper 7 stars array thousands of times and finally closed the array temporarily. The Big Dipper 7 stars array was more profound and powerful than the 5 elements derivation array. Therefore, even if he tried his best, he could only temporarily close the array for 6 days. After Ji Tianqing stopped, his face was already pale, and bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His true essence was exhausted again, and he was extremely exhausted. He had to take out a spirit stone and sit down to recover his power. Yun Yao sat in front of him again and looked into his eyes. She pressed her palms together and helped him recover his power. After 6 hours, Ji Tianqing had recovered 80% of his power. He endured the physical and mental exhaustion and continued to break the Tianyuan Grand Formation. There are still 3 arrays to break, but I only have 6 days. This time, I will break the 6-direction stabilization array. Although Chu Huaishan and the other deacons were shocked and amazed by him breaking the Big Dipper 7 stars array again. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that it would be more difficult to break the array later. Moreover, he was very pressed for time and could not relax at all. Chapter 361. Compared to the Big Dipper 7 stars formation, the 6-direction stabilization formation was slightly simpler. Ji Tianqing spent 8 hours to crack this formation. Of course, after cracking this formation, he was also exhausted. He used up all his true essence and was on the verge of collapsing. Even if he immediately cultivated and used spirit stones to recover his true essence, it would take at least 2 to 3 days to recover. After all, his mental strength was extremely weak, and his consciousness was a little blurry. Damn it, there are only 2 formations left, and I can't hold on anymore. I'm still not strong enough. Ji Tianqing was full of hatred and unwillingness. If his strength was above the origin core realm, he might be able to hold on for another 2 days, and it was very likely that he could completely crack the entire Big Dipper formation. But now, he could only sit on the ground and absorb the true essence from the spirit stones. Yun Yao looked at him with concern and asked gently, "Junior brother Tianqing, are you okay? Can you still hold on?" Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at her. His gaze just happened to meet her clear eyes that were filled with worry. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He looked at Yun Yao sincerely and asked in a serious tone, "Eldest senior sister, I want to ask you for a favor. I wonder if it's possible?" "Yes, go ahead." Yun Yao nodded without hesitation. She didn't hesitate at all. Ji Tianqing said seriously, "Eldest senior sister, I know that you're very talented in formations, so I want to ask you to help me crack the last 2 formations." "I'll help you crack the formations?" Yun Yao was stunned and could not believe it. "Junior brother Tianqing, it's not that I don't want to help, but I don't know how to crack the formations. If I rashly crack the formations, it will bring disaster." Ji Tianqing gave her an encouraging look and said with a smile, "It's okay, I can teach you how to crack the formations. I'll protect you from the side, and you can crack the formations." This. Yun Yao hesitated and thought about it. "Junior brother Tianqing, did you just say that there are still 2 more formations to be broken? But there's only 1 left." Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, "There are indeed 2 formations left. One is the 8 Extreme Dragon Lock formation, and the other is the 9 Cauldrons Universe formation." 9 Cauldrons of the Universe? Yun Yao frowned, her eyes filled with shock and doubt. She wasn't the only one. Even Chu Huaishan had never heard of the 9 Cauldrons world's method of setting up formations. He was immediately filled with shock and disbelief. Yun Yao stared at Ji Tianqing and pondered silently. She knew in her heart that the method to break this formation was an incomparably precious secret technique. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. Generally speaking, anyone who grasped such a shocking secret technique would never reveal half a word of it to outsiders. Ji Tianqing actually wanted to pass on this kind of secret technique to her. Of course, he had incomparable trust in her and regarded her as someone he could entrust to him. This warmed Yun Yao's heart and made her feel a heavy responsibility on her shoulders. She couldn't bear to see Ji Tianqing disappointed, so she quickly nodded and agreed to this matter. "All right, Tianqing, I'm willing to help you." After receiving her affirmative answer, Ji Tianqing felt relieved and a smile appeared on his pale face. "Eldest senior sister, thank you." After that, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on a huge black rock and stared at the Tianyuan formation. He used his spiritual sense to transmit his voice to Yun Yao and taught her the method to break the 8 Extreme Dragon Lock formation. Yun Yao was indeed the #1 genius in the Tianjin region. Her talent in formations was also outstanding. She understood the method to break the formation that Ji Tianqing taught her as soon as she heard it. Moreover, she was able to draw inferences and understand the profound meaning and mystery of the method to break the formation. In just a short hour, she had firmly memorized the method to break the 8 extreme dragon lock formation in her heart. Then, she stretched out her palms and drew mysterious lines and gestures. She constantly sent out rays of true essence light into the Tianyuan formation. Her face was solemn as she stared at the Tianyuan formation attentively. Her body exuded a confident and powerful aura. When she injected her true essence into the formation and used the method to break it, the light shield within a kilometer radius soared with white light and turned into a white fog that covered the sky. In the white fog that covered a radius of 10 miles, a few golden dragon-shaped phantoms appeared and flew around the formation at an extremely fast speed. There were a total of 8 golden dragons. Each of them was lifelike and hundreds of meters long. Their bodies were as huge as mountains and exuded a sacred and mighty domineering aura. The 8 dragons flew back and forth. They didn't seem to be connected to each other and didn't crowd together. However, there was an invisible connection between them that formed an invisible protective layer that protected the entire formation. As the 8 divine dragons danced in the air, the formation began to circulate rapidly as well, creating a terrifying hurricane that spread out in all directions. The sand and stones on the ground were blown into the air, and dust filled the sky. Yun Yao stood in the wind and used the method to break the formation with a solemn expression. Her eyes were also firm and extremely solemn. Ji Tianqing sat beside her and observed the reaction of the formation with his sharp eyes. He saw all the changes in the formation. Every few breaths, he would transmit his voice to Yun Yao and recite the incantation. He taught her the method to break the formation very carefully and made sure that she didn't make any mistakes or deviations. As time passed, the 8 dragons flew faster and faster. The hurricane around the formation also became more and more violent. After a full 16 hours, the 8 divine dragon phantoms gradually dissipated, and the raging hurricane finally dissipated. At this time, the 8 extreme dragon lock formation was finally broken by Yun Yao. It was temporarily closed for 5 days. Yun Yao stopped and heaved a sigh of relief. She turned her head and looked at Ji Tianqing. Both of them showed a tacit smile, as if they had a tacit understanding. She rested for 4 hours. After her true essence recovered, she started to break the last 9 cauldrons universe under Ji Tianqing's guidance. This formation was the most profound, exquisite, and unpredictable. It was also the most difficult to break. Yun Yao listened attentively to Ji Tianqing's voice transmission. She was fully focused on breaking the formation. She really went all out and used all of her strength and spirit. After 2 hours, the 9 cauldrons universe formation was activated. In the sky within a radius of 1,000 meters, 9 giant cauldrons appeared. Every giant cauldron was like a mountain. They emitted a majestic and heavy aura that could suppress heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing looked at the formation with a solemn expression and kept reciting the incantation. Yun Yao's reaction was extremely fast. Her strength was also more powerful. She actually started to break the formation successfully. Moreover, her tacit understanding with Ji Tianqing became deeper and deeper. Gradually, they formed a kind of telepathic connection. After a whole day, Yun Yao also exhausted her true essence. Her spirit was weak. At this time, the 9 giant cauldron phantoms finally disappeared. The 9 cauldrons universe formation was broken. It was temporarily closed for 4 days. Although Yun Yao's face was as pale as paper and her spirit was weak, she was very excited and excited. We did it. We really broke the Tianyuan formation. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.